This story begins with a system notification that our main character named Larry receives. Magical powers enter his body, and he suddenly wakes up from the sleep he had just recently fallen into. He immediately grabs his head and wonders what happened, remembering that he recently saw a cat in front of him. In fact, what happened to him cannot be called teleportation or any other magical processes. The thing is, the huge fat cat he had seen before fell on his face and immediately broke his neck. A moment later, Larry sees a system notification in front of him that gives him rewards for dying. Larry is initially angry about this and wonders where the hell he is, and if he will now have to die for the rewards. Unable to control his emotions, he makes a quick strike towards the system notification, hitting the wall. After seeing that he has created a huge crack in the stone wall, he concludes that the system may be more useful than he thought. Immediately after this, he calls the system and turns to the distribution of points to understand what it is for. There is no answer to his question, and he decides to wait a little longer. After making sure that no one answers him, he wonders if there is no guide for newbies in this system. When he returns, he suddenly discovers a body lying nearby and realizes that this body belongs to him. While no one is looking, he quickly flies up to him to search the pocket of his previous body. Larry discovers that after being resurrected, he copies all of his belongings and can thus accumulate more money. Larry understands that dying is a rather painful process, but he has to try. Initially, he tries to crash into a wall, accelerating at high speed and fracturing his skull. He also jumps towards the archers to get an arrow straight into his heart. The system rewards him for such lazy use of his superpower with very low mortality ratings. To his surprise, he also discovers that he has limitations on resurrection. Larry realizes that if he accidentally dies after the number of resurrections runs out, it will lead to something irreparable. He comes to the conclusion that he has already died in past lives, and now that he has a system, he cannot die again. With an incredible sense of confidence in his body, he punches the ground and declares that he cannot just die like that. He also decides to gain a foothold in this world and find more reliable ways of death, after which he will be resurrected. Immediately after this, the sound of a body falling onto the stone canvas is heard behind him. Larry looks around the corner and discovers that someone is being robbed right next to him. He smiles and realizes that now is the right moment to prove himself as a hero. The scoundrel continues to beat the unfortunate man, despite all his requests to let him go. Just after the bandits rob this townsman, Larry comes out of the shadows. He asks the unfortunate peasant if he wants help to repay his debt, after which the peasant asks who he is. Larry smiles and explains that his success is based on helping people collect their debts. Not even a few hours pass before he finds the house of the bandit who robbed the unfortunate man. The angry villain claims that he did nothing, even if they try to kill him. A moment later, a sharpened steel flashes next to his face, and the bandit's fighting spirit evaporates. Trying to somehow rectify the situation, he asks Larry who he is and why he decided to kill him. Larry smiles, takes the sword away from the criminal's face and says that he won't be doing this. Immediately after this, he puts a knife to his throat, declaring that his ghost will come for him. The bandit doesn't have time to really understand anything when suddenly Larry commits another suicide in front of the astonished public. Looking at this terrible sight, the bandit tries to stop Larry, asking if he has gone crazy. This time, the system rewards the main character with a higher rating, and also gives him more points. A whole week passes before the bandit encounters our hero again, as he needed to restore his resurrection. A mysterious silhouette with a smile on his face suddenly appears above the sleeping bandit's body. A strange and persistent look makes the bandit wake up, and he sees something threatening in front of him. Larry stands over his face, holding a candle, and demands that he give up the money, which scares the villain to death. A few minutes later, Larry is already walking out onto another street, twirling a thick bag of money in his hands. Another week passes, and we are transported to the house of a nobleman whose wife is trying to feed him medicine. Before the nobleman can take the bowl, it suddenly disappears from the young girl's hands. Larry quickly grabs the plate and immediately tries to drink everything that is in it. Immediately after this, he gives a thumbs-up gesture, and blood begins to flow profusely from his mouth. A few more seconds pass, and he falls dead to the ground, his whole appearance making it clear that it was poison. The nobleman scolds his wife and asks if she really wanted to kill him, to which she replies that other officials forced her to do so. An hour passes, and this nobleman already meets with Larry, who, nevertheless, has come up with a brilliant explanation for his immortality. The nobleman gives him the money, sincerely believing that before this he had dealt with brother Larry, who was too selfless. Larry pretends to be very sad, and says that he is forced to accept the money in order to properly bury his relative. Thus, 3 whole months pass, and Larry spends them with incredible financial benefit for himself. He sits happily at the table, thinking about how he has become famous throughout the city thanks to his abilities. He also smiles as he reflects that as long as he dies for others, his valuation continues to rise. Besides, after all these deaths, his body turned out to be much stronger, and now he can do the incredible. He also faced a problem. He needed to increase his rating, which meant he would have to arrange a more large-scale death for himself. He also laments the fact that resurrection does not make him younger, so sooner or later, he will grow old. Larry makes a firm decision to cultivate immortality in order to stay in this world for a long time. A few moments later, he hears the sound of a wooden cane and a female voice asking where the debt collector is. Looking up, he sees before him a beautiful woman who, however, wears a blindfold. Larry reflects on the fact that in front of him is a real beauty who still cannot rely on her eyesight. A girl named Lily reveals that her family was wiped out by the Wuhan clan 6 months ago, and that she is the only survivor. She also says that she must take revenge, because it is a blood debt, after which she asks for help from the main character. She states that in exchange, she can teach him the longevity fist skill that her family possessed. Larry looks at the girl for a long time, and then asks her if she is a character from his favorite game. But the girl does not understand him. Some time passes and the scene moves to a very noisy and busy market. The young man asks the seller how he can even sell products in this pigsty, and then asks him to cut up a watermelon. An angry salesman asks his customer what the hell he is doing there. Larry, pretending to be a small child, continues to provoke the butcher, causing him to attack him. Larry smiles and says that now everyone will know that this butcher is actually a martial arts master. Dodging from side to side, he claims that this butcher destroyed Lily's family, which means that retribution will come today. And after a few seconds, the main character loses all advantages and receives mortal wounds. Having received injuries incompatible with life, he joyfully falls to the ground, managing to make an approving gesture. Ordinary citizens look at what is happening in surprise, not understanding what the hell just happened. The butcher comes closer to Larry's body and does not realize that he has definitely gone to the next world. People start shouting that he is a murderer. He gets on a child's bicycle and says that he will not let himself be taken alive. Larry, meanwhile, goes through the standard resurrection procedure. He begins to massage his shoulder, realizing that this time death was quite painful. However, a smile spreads across his face as he claims that dying is almost always unpleasant. Immediately after this, he approaches his body and asks the system how many points it will give for this death. Without thinking twice, he calls up system notifications and begins to carefully study his indicators. The system notifies him that his death rating has risen to an unprecedented level of C. Larry also discovers that he will now have his skill points deducted, and wonders if he made a mistake in activating the system. He also asks the system to grant him the Fist of Immortality skill, but is refused. Larry decides not to be discouraged, realizing that in any case, he still has work to do. From his point of view, he needs to get to the butcher and let him kill him a few more times to gain more skills. Meanwhile, the butcher contacts his boss and tells him that he killed the child who claimed to have destroyed Lily's family. He asks himself how this is possible, and states that this family was completely destroyed and no one knows about it. In tension, he thinks that, apparently, someone still remained alive, and decides to destroy him. Suddenly, someone enters his room, and he turns around in surprise, trying to figure out who decided to disturb his peace. Larry appears in front of him and asks him why the hell he is still alive. Larry smiles and says that the butcher actually killed his brother, and must now pay the price with his blood. Rushing forward, he claims that he will do anything for his family's legacy. The butcher begins to get nervous and swings his dagger left and right, trying to somehow hurt his opponent. Quite quickly, it hits the protagonist's hand, cutting it into 2 parts. Larry, however, does not lose his enthusiasm and asks his opponent what he will do now. The butcher asks if he is all right in the head, and reminds him that his hand was cut in 2. However, he tries to pull the knife out of the deep wound, but Larry punches him in the face. The butcher jumps aside and says that Larry is significantly different from his brother in terms of power. He also adds that next time he will not make such mistakes, and will hit for sure. 5 minutes pass and Larry loses again, soundly, as he still lacks experience. The butcher, however, finds himself quite exhausted from this intense battle. Looking at Larry's lifeless body, he says that this man did everything to avenge his brother, and that it was stupid. Immediately after this, he calls the pigeon with the letter, and informs that the situation has changed, which means that it is necessary to wait with sending it. A moment later, a huge wooden structure flies past his face. Larry is eager to fight again and claims that he will avenge his brother's death. One of them declares that if this is what he so desires, then he will gladly give death to another premature baby. Several more tense minutes of battle pass, but this time the butcher finds victory extremely difficult. He tries to catch his breath and says that killing young people is quite a difficult task. He also states how many enemies he has killed today, hoping that they are finished. Larry, meanwhile, respawns behind his opponent, happy to see that his skills have improved. He also discovers that he only has 1 resurrection left and wonders if he should attack now. At first it seemed to him that he could wait another week, but he quickly changed his mind. He also understands that in the last fight he almost defeated his opponent, so now he has every chance. Larry smiles and says that it's time to finish this task early and move on to a new one. At the same time, it says that these guys are very similar to each other, but each of them is stronger than the previous one. From his point of view, if he had had even 1 more opponent, he would have been defeated. A tired smile appears on his face. He says that fortunately, everything is now definitely over. A moment later, they hear Larry's joyful voice, saying that things are still far from over. He looks up in fear and discovers a menacing young man standing above him, preparing to jump. Before Butcher can do anything, Larry lunges forward and delivers a powerful punch straight to the opponent's heart. Moments later, the Butcher falls to the ground and is defeated and killed in the blink of an eye. Larry receives a cash reward of several bags of hard coins. He also reads the secret letter and finds out that this Butcher really did destroy Lily's family. Quite quickly, he reaches the encrypted part of the letter and decides to show it to Lily. Dressed appropriately so that no one could recognize him, he heads into the city. Approaching a small house, he quietly knocks on the door and says that he has returned. Lily quickly opens the door for him and carefully studies her guest. Larry stands still, not wanting to disturb his ally, as she reaches her hand forward. Touching his face, she asks him where he has been, when suddenly her behavior changes dramatically. Her ears suddenly start to signal that there is someone else in front of her. Lily steps aside and says that it is not Larry in front of her because his voice is different. Larry chuckles and apologizes to his neighbor, saying that his voice just changed. Lily asks him if she can somehow prove it. Larry responds by telling a joke about the characters from the game. Lily remembers that he pestered her with these idiotic questions for a whole month. Immediately after this, she takes a few steps towards him and presses herself closer to him. Larry smiles and realizes that he has once again achieved true male happiness. Lily stands like this for a few seconds, after which she sits our hero down on the table and steps aside. After this, she coughs shyly and says that it really is Larry in front of her. Thinking awkwardly, she sits down comfortably on the table right in front of him in order to have a heart-to-heart talk. Lily also says that after the destruction of her family, her eyes began to move, which is a sign that the heavens are about to open. Larry smiles and says that she is the only one left in the family, but the enemy will not kill her because she was born with spiritual consciousness. He also says that he has almost reached the peak of his strength, so he can begin to study martial techniques. Lily praises the protagonist's assertiveness, then takes his hand to help her stand up. She also states that she will now check whether he has enough strength to withstand the training. To do this, she decides to examine the main character's body with her fingers, and stumbles upon something strange. Lily doesn't understand what it is, as she has spent her entire life in the dark due to congenital blindness. She asks in fear what she just touched, not believing that Larry is so pumped up. The confused hero replies that she just touched his hand, to which Lily replies that it was rather awkward. Continuing to examine Larry's arms, Lily says that strength training takes a lot of time, but it is already producing results. Larry suggests that if Lily thinks he is making great progress, she should teach him a new technique. He also reflects that the technique he learns will help him live even longer. He understands perfectly well that his path will be extremely difficult, but it is the only way to gain immortality. Lily states that learning this technique will take quite a long time, but Larry replies that he has already finished off the Butcher who killed her family. Lily asks him in shock how this is even possible, barely keeping herself from spilling her tea. Larry says that he not only killed the man, but also got hold of the letter. But he can't decipher the tadpole cipher. Lily says that the code is used by the Wuhan Association, realizing that he really wasn't lying when he announced his resounding victory. Larry says that if he has completed this task, then he is ready to move on to the next level, and then asks her to strengthen him. Lily begins the process of meditation in order to help the protagonist improve his skills. Larry sits down on a special mat and discovers that a special learning strip has appeared above him. He muses that it's better to rely on systemic rewards than to train on your own. Lily, meanwhile, hands him a dictionary of encrypted text for him to look at and calculate. Larry is surprised that his friends cannot see the text, but Lily was able to find a book on the translation. Nevertheless, he opens the letters she offers and tries to translate what is said in the encrypted message. After some time, he manages to obtain information that the Emperor is going to go on a journey. He also discovers that the Wuhan Association is gathering its forces to destroy the Emperor. Lily is shocked and wonders if this is true, and tries to figure out when and where this is supposed to happen. Larry is informed that Schaefer is quite difficult to translate, and is not capable of more, which makes Lily nervous. The girl states that this organization is quite brave, and if they really do this, then something wrong will happen. Larry asks them if they can be considered that strong, to which Lily replies that she never named the reason for the destruction of the family. Lily tells him about the existence of a man named Shen, who is the second most powerful in the world of martial arts. She also states that this man founded a martial arts club and destroyed many family clans. From her point of view, this man does not respect other clans, and does not allow them to increase their influence. She also states that the Fist of Immortality is a skill unique to her family that has been passed down through generations. Lily honestly admits that the invaders were unable to get hold of this technique, but now she has taught Larry, and therefore he must be more careful. The girl also declares with all determination that she wants to kill Shen with her own hands. Larry understands that this girl is extremely determined and decides to help, in order to level up himself at the same time. He smiles and says that maybe he can join the association to become king. Lily calls him crazy and asks why he needs to go there. Larry rises loudly to his feet, slamming his hand down on the table to give his words more emphasis. He says that he plans to join the association, kill the Emperor, and thereby cause enmity between the Imperial Court and Wuhan. He also states that if the first option doesn't work out, then he'll just find out what exactly they were planning and then set them up. Lily says that this plan is very meager, but Larry is already dreaming of the fame he will receive if he kills the Emperor. From his point of view, for killing such a high-ranking figure and causing a tornado in battle, he would receive so many points that he would be able to learn hundreds of techniques. He also says that Shen is very strong, so he will at least give him trouble. Lily asks fearfully what will happen if he himself dies on his dangerous path. Larry makes a pompous face and says that in order to kill him, the enemy will have to try very hard. Lily carefully analyzes her ally's words with her incredible insight. She detects incredible confidence in his voice and wonders if he is serious. Lily also wonders if this man desires anything more than learning the Death Fist technique. Larry asks his interlocutor what is happening to her and why she suddenly turned red. Lily does not admit her thoughts to him and asks how she can repay him for such an incredible service. Larry steps back and says there are actually a couple of things she can do for him. Lily collects her thoughts and asks if he would like a reward for completing such a successful mission. Larry chuckles and says that for now it will be kept a top secret. Lily says nothing for a long time, trying to understand what her mysterious and extremely self-confident ally meant. She also reflects that this man is not afraid of anything, so she does not have to worry about him, and agrees to this. Larry says that he will now go looking for leads, and asks her if she knows anyone from the Wuhan Association. Lily says she knows of a man named Howard, who is the ruler of Chung City. The action moves a little further south, to a city where the townspeople are being attacked by villains. The guards mercilessly whip everyone who is near them with special whips that cause incredible suffering. They order everyone to disperse, saying that Master Henry is coming and they must give way to him. They also say that no one should stand in the way of the Master unless they want to lose their life. Mr. Henry, who is Mr. Howard's son, suddenly turns his gaze upon seeing something interesting. He points his finger at the cute girl and says that she should come to him in a minute. The girl immediately draws her sword, saying that she will not please him, even if she is on the verge of death. However, before they can prepare for battle, their fighting capabilities are limited. They are betrayed by their own servants, who tell them that they must go to Master Henry. The girl guesses that Henry is not interested in her at all, but in her brothers. They, in turn, call the gentleman shameless, while his assistant asks to be given the opportunity to teach him a lesson. Henry becomes irritated at such disobedience and grits his teeth in anger. He says he'd be happy to see who else can teach whom a lesson in this situation. His incredibly empowered servants rush forward at their opponents, giving them no chance to win. In an instant, the two unfortunates find themselves caught between a rock and a hard place. Henry watches the action with joy as Larry continues to watch him. A moment later, he jumps on him, causing a large splash of dust and surprising his servants. Larry lifts the villain off the ground, holding him tightly by the neck, causing shock to everyone nearby. Henry advises the strange boy to let him go, claiming that he is the ruler of this city. Larry just smirks and says that for him these words are empty sounds and mean nothing. Henry declares that his father will arrive here very soon, and then Larry will definitely lose his head. Larry pretends to be completely indifferent to this information, although deep down he is very happy about this death. He reflects that he originally just wanted to be right and brave enough to die in battle, but now he sees a more attractive option. The system immediately tells him that he must act incredibly bravely, reporting that the current death level is at C+. Upon receiving this notification, the protagonist immediately becomes happier, realizing that he has an interesting job. The servants run quite successfully towards their master in order to save him from this trouble. Larry smiles and says that it is unlikely that anyone will be able to help him in such a difficult situation. He immediately slaps him several times, causing incredible surprise among all the people watching this. Immediately after this, he begins to blackmail Henry's fighters, saying that if they come even one step closer, he will kill their master. Henry continues to grunt something unintelligible, and Larry realizes they need to change their approach. He declares that this will not do and hits Henry hard in the face, telling him to call his dad. Quite a bit of time passes, and a loud thundering of hooves begins to resound in the air. A few moments later, the same Howard, who was his original target, appears behind the main character. Henry looks pitifully at his father, hoping that he will save him. Larry notes that the man looks quite respectable, when suddenly Howard shouts at everyone to be quiet. Larry knows this man is good at martial arts if just one phrase can create such a strong tension. Howard watches his opponent, and is surprised that he has not yet developed his strength, but can already hold a person with one hand. A moment later, he jumps off his mount and approaches his target, whom he is about to kill. In the presence of such a powerful man, absolutely everyone falls to their knees so as not to incur his wrath. Larry remains the only exception, trying to study his opponent better. He understands that the energetic pressure that this person radiates is at a solid level. In order to appear tougher, he orders Howard to remain still in order to extract more information. Howard ignores this demand and continues to approach him very slowly. He understands that this man can use his powers, but nothing can cope with his pressure. Suddenly, Howard smiles and says that they can resolve this issue peacefully, after which he asks to let his son go. Larry wonders in his mind why he doesn't just kill him, and why all this unnecessary chatter. Taking a quick look at the system notification, he realizes that his death rating hasn't changed, so he needs to act quickly. Larry tries to provoke his opponent by asking him why he is standing up for his son. Nearby, potential victims are asking questions about whether the man really decided to apologize. Having fallen for this trick, they themselves apologize, saying that they did not think that such a situation could arise between them. Civilians watching the events express doubts that the master will forgive such things. Larry decides not to let things slide and turns to Howard with another question. He asks him if he really thinks that offering a large sum of money will justify his son's behavior. He also states that his son ordered his guards to shoot down people who were blocking the way, and that such things cannot be fixed with money. He also claims that the amount offered is too little to atone for his guilt. Howard continues to glare at his opponent, realizing that this man has suddenly begun to irritate him greatly. As a final type of magical gesture, he says that all he wants is for his son to be well. Larry says that this is all too easy and suggests another way out of this situation. With these words, he points to his face and says that he will only let his son go if someone kills him. After this, he continues to look at Howard, waiting to see what action this arrogant official will take. Civilians are wondering whether a simple passerby has decided to stand up for them and thereby demonstrate his incredible valor. Howard exhales tensely and says that, apparently, they will never be able to come to a normal agreement. At that very moment, the main character feels a strange aura that suddenly appears right next to his body. He manages to turn around in the direction of his supposed opponent, but sees only bandages flying rapidly. Within moments, Henry falls to the ground, gasping for air. The mysterious old man ties Larry up using a secret technique that he knew nothing about until now. Larry acts like he's annoyed by what's happening, but he's actually happy that his death score will be very high. Howard comes closer to him and asks him his name to find out who he is dealing with. Larry gives his name and says that he has no family or patrons, and that he simply wanted to kill Henry. Howard looks at him carefully and says that these are pretty bold words for someone who is on the verge of death. Immediately after this, he turns to his subordinate and orders him to let this boy go. He also states that he appreciated his courage and offered him a job in the army, since such people are in great need there. Larry is very upset by this, realizing that everything is not going according to the scenario he had planned. Henry and Howard walk away while the arrogant son tries to complain to his father. In response to this, he gives him a powerful slap in the face to teach him manners. He orders him to shut up immediately, accuses him of being too arrogant, and then declares that he should get out of here. A few moments later, he finds himself on his trusty horse, his hands gripping the reins. Before leaving here, he again turns to the main character and tells him that he can come to his mansion at any time. Larry finds himself extremely disheartened by this development, as his best death has just been cancelled. The civilians are also impressed by the ruler's behavior, and report that despite his worthless son, his father remains fair. Larry is very upset about this, wondering what is wrong with these guys and why they didn't just finish him off. He falls to his knees and watches as his current mortality rate remains unchanged. The fact that his mortality rate still hasn't decreased causes him to buy clothes and come to the conclusion that the city master is not involved in what is happening. He also wonders if the rating would be the same if he died right now. Meanwhile, his thoughts are interrupted by quiet applause, which becomes louder with each passing second. He also finds that unfortunate people who are about to become victims of violence also bow down before him. Larry guesses that his mortality rate will be linked to his reputation in this city, since he is now a righteous man who cursed the ruler. A smile appears on his face, and he realizes that now, as long as he remains correct and brave, his reputation and popularity will continue to grow. Now, if he manages to die, he can become much stronger. But if he doesn't die, he will continue to accumulate life rating. In his dreams, he understands that when he finally dies, his death must be the most cruel. Ordinary townspeople watch the daydreaming righteous man and try to understand why he suddenly froze in place. Meanwhile, at Howard's residence, his son receives first aid to relieve the severe pain in his face. Henry looks at his father again pitifully and asks him why he didn't teach that damn Larry a lesson. Howard replies that they are in no hurry and have nothing to worry about, since such matters cannot be rushed. Howard reflects that the faces of the people around him showed how much resentment they had accumulated towards the current government. This is why he comes to the conclusion that it is better to find a way to kill this man more discreetly, and at the same time gain the support of the population. Howard turns to his son and says that he should have been punished long ago, otherwise he would soon have caused a disaster. Howard also mentions that the current saint may visit the area during this month, so one must behave accordingly. Henry is surprised by such amazing news and wonders if this information is true. Howard asks his son if he doubts him, adding that the city is full of murders. Henry asks his father if he wants to invite Larry to be the Emperor's bodyguard, to which he only nods. He also states that it would be easier if this man joined them, as it would then be easier to kill him. A wicked smile appears on his face and he thinks about how there are battles going on at the Eastern Mountain, and that this man needs to be sent there. Larry, meanwhile, visits Lily to tell her what happened. Lily says that this information will prove promising to her, and he replies that he has chosen the mansion of the Lord of the City. Lily rests tensely, realizing that she will hardly be able to stop her comrade, and after thinking for a long time, she takes out a small book from under her clothes and says that she has a technique that can help him. Larry happily takes the book with notes from her hands, and the girl tells him that it is a secret martial arts technique. Larry carefully reads the title, and discovers that he is holding a book on the study of the disintegration of the demons of heaven. He joyfully presses it to his cheeks, realizing that he has obtained another treasure for himself. Lily says that you need to train your spiritual strength first, and then start training. She also adds that the protagonist's way of thinking is very special, and therefore it will be easier for him to master the technique. Lily also realizes that she is starting to worry about her comrade, who, although very strong, is taking a great risk. She tells him that she gave him this skill not so that he would continue to work like this, but so that he would have a better chance of survival. Larry smiles as he looks at her and says that he understands her motives perfectly. After this, he continues to look at the book, still enjoying himself, which causes Lily to sigh tiredly. After some time, the scene moves to the barracks of the army garrison in which Larry has joined. He trains with his weapon in order to hone his skills to the maximum level. He decides to choose a long spear as his main weapon to complement his agility. Larry also discusses how, since ancient times, couriers have been considered lucky ones who are easier to send somewhere. Soldiers who watch him in his training say that he appears to be quite weak. They also suggest just waiting, since this person will die without their participation in a few days. Larry, meanwhile, decides to take up cultivation to improve his skills. Larry wonders when death will finally overtake him so that he can level up even more. Suddenly, a strange man approaches him and asks if he really wants to transfer the skills. The man introduces himself by his name, and then suddenly begins to make fun of Larry because of his yellow teeth. The man waves them off, then says that he has a lot of interesting things, but he will have to work for it. The soldiers try to warn Larry and recommend that he first inquire about what kind of work the old man is offering. Larry asks the old man what he needs to do, to which he replies that he has to work with iron. Larry realizes that learning iron skills will help him improve his performance even further. He also states that he loves studying martial arts more than anything in his life and wants to improve himself even more. The old man tells him that he doesn't need money, since work is the most important thing. With these words, he takes out a small book in which the secrets of the technique are written down, and turns around. Coming closer, he tells that in fact, 4 months ago, the gentleman hid his pregnant wife, and it was not possible to save the child. He falls to his knees and says that he wants to live together, for himself and his wife, who has since become something completely different from herself. Larry immediately says that he will fulfill the request without any problems, and the old man thanks him for his responsiveness. A few moments later, they are interrupted by a soldier who appears and asks Larry to come to him. Larry follows his interlocutor and finds himself in a tent that belongs to the chief commander of the garrison. He reports that in the eastern part of the city lives the leader of a bandit gang nicknamed Sammy. A few moments later, the commander pulls out a flag from the miniature map, feeling hatred overcome him. He says that this scoundrel allowed himself to become king and wonders if such a thing is possible. To vent his angry emotions, he throws the flag towards Larry, who is still watching the events. The garrison commander reports that this man was engaged in theft of government property. The chief also claims that this thief allowed himself to take almost all the beauties, and adds that if they are lucky, they will still be able to escape from his clutches. To add to the drama, he says that if they don't get out of there in time, they will die, doomed to drag out a miserable existence. Larry immediately becomes enraged and declares that they will not allow this beast to live, emphasizing that the bandits must be exterminated immediately. The garrison commander says that this is why he is going to gather an army of 1,000 men and leave the city in 5 days. After this, he mentions that he has heard about Larry's bravery and asks if he would like to be a pioneer. Larry immediately assumes a fighting stance, which greatly surprises the garrison commander. Filled with enthusiasm, he announces that he is ready to listen to and obey such an order. Without thinking twice, he leaves the tent and begins to think about what he should do. He understands that in an army of 1,000 people there are only a few who possess the same strength, but he was chosen as the pioneer. However, Larry quickly figures out the city's master's true plan and realizes that he was not sent there for his bravery. Either way, it doesn't affect his future plans, since he already wanted to die gloriously. The garrison commander watches Larry walk away, giggling with caution. He watches him, wondering what they're even going to do with this guy, and trying to figure out why he agreed in the first place. Just 5 days later, Larry finds himself in the mountains to the east, not far from his goal. The soldiers following him say that they know the area and can give him directions. Larry agrees to such a service, but recommends going behind to set up an ambush. The old man is very surprised by such kindness, and says that Larry is the best he has ever met. Larry also reveals that this is actually an order, and muses that dying alone won't be so easy. After some time, they continue their search and cut down the long grass that is hindering their progress. The old man tells his new interlocutor about how strong his daughter is, and asks what he was like at that age. Larry claims that at the age of 15 he was already killing people, as if it were something ordinary for him. He also states that they need to gossip less, when suddenly something starts to rapidly approach them. Larry looks up to find a city of sharpened arrows flying towards them. To save his careless partner, he kicks him aside. The resulting impulse sends the old man flying, but Larry himself finds himself in great danger. However, this doesn't frighten him at all. He rushes forward using the tornado spear skill. After using this incredibly powerful-looking skill, He finds that it is not nearly as effective as he thought, as he received some injuries. Several bandits immediately run out of the grass and prepare to cut up the soldiers for meat. They immediately take aim at the main character and his partners, and also grab their swords. Larry looks at them happily, realizing that his death is just around the corner, and the mortality assessment system is on the rise again. Without thinking for a second, he rushes forward, holding onto his spear, and announces that he will strike down these scoundrels. The soldiers are inspired by his example and also engage in battle with their opponents. They do not give up an inch of ground, despite the fact that their opponents are not weaklings. However, Larry's presence allows him to gain an incredible advantage, as he can destroy multiple opponents with one blow. His spear is a formidable weapon that gives him a strong advantage in attack range. Throwing away one opponent after another, he makes no distinction between them, as if this were some kind of warm-up for him. The soldiers continue to observe the actions of the protagonist and realize that this man is truly mad. Pretty soon, the enemy starts to flee, and Larry wonders if that's all they can do. Immediately after this, he grabs the arrow sticking out of his hand and realizes that he needs to stop the bleeding. The old man falls to his knees and says that his boss took 3 arrows at once, so he must repay him. Larry replies that his actions do not deserve gratitude, at which point his comrade immediately begins to bandage him. Larry reflects on how he originally wanted to be the enemy, but he never imagined that they would flee. The soldier asks Larry why he saved the old man's life if he had already paid for the equipment. Larry realizes what the man means and asks him if he has anything interesting for him. The soldier replies that he doesn't have any interesting techniques right now, but he does have some educational materials in the city. Larry says that in that case he will await their return with genuine anticipation. Returning, Larry, after several hours of wandering, came across a deep crevice behind which, according to his assumption, there might be a lair. He turned to the old man and asked what the name of this valley was. The old man replied that it had no name. With these words, Larry walked up to a small tree and, using a spear, carved several symbols into it. He wonders if this inscription would make a great name for the place where he died. Suddenly, the voice of the garrison commander is heard behind him, asking why Larry is not moving forward. Larry explains that they are trapped and cannot go any further, but the boss quickly calms down. He asks if Larry will be able to refuse to carry out an order at the first sign of fear, suspecting that he is trying to disobey. Larry decides not to enter into an argument and realizes that his moment will come later. Turning to the side, he heads forward again, believing that dying for obedience is a stupid reason. Rage still seethes inside him, and he understands that after the bandits, he will get to the general. Since then, Larry's suspicions have only grown stronger. It seems to him that they really want to kill him. Not long before this, their travels are interrupted by another ambush by bandits in the gorge. Comrades ask whether they should flee or accept battle with strong opponents. Larry orders them to save their lives but does not follow them. Turning around, they see that the garrison commander has remained, sacrificing himself to give the soldiers a chance to escape. Larry turns to his comrades and says that they should not even think about returning, hinting at his orders. With that, he rushes into battle again, killing his enemy with a powerful blow from his spear. On the other side, the garrison commander is already waiting for them, ordering the soldiers never to retreat. He emphasizes that this is an order from a general that cannot be disobeyed. Larry hears everything and understands that if the army fights with him, he may not die. The soldiers are filled with fighting spirit and rush forward to support their hero. They grab their weapons, ready to die next to the man who sacrificed himself for them. Larry tries to stop them, reminding the old man that his wife is waiting for him at home, and is unlikely to be happy about the news of his death. The old man admits that he too would not like to die, but he cannot watch his approaching death. An irritated Larry suggests closing his eyes so as not to see what happens next. Bandits run out to meet him, but he bravely rushes into battle. Larry states that those who can't shouldn't try, and if someone is afraid to speak up, he will speak up for everyone. A moment later, the arrow penetrates deep into his body, and he feels his strength fading. The enemy numbers grow and he quickly finds himself surrounded. However, he knows that death is not a threat to him, and he prepares to defeat several more enemies. The bandits rush forward to kill the king, but each time they encounter Larry's power and are defeated. Another bandit falls, mortally wounded. Larry stops and orders the bandits surrounding him to come up one by one. He then raises his palm and beckons them with his finger, daring them to be cruel. The bandits respond and rush forward, plunging Larry into a new wave of battle. Suddenly, he feels a surge of strength that allows him to hold out longer. With each new enemy defeated, Larry becomes stronger, although new ones immediately take the place of those who died. However, this does not stop him. He is on the verge of a breakthrough. Smiling sinisterly, he feels energy fill his body, making his blows even more powerful. The garrison commander continues to observe and notes Larry's inner strength. He understands that before him is a martial arts master, seasoned in battles by the age of 20. He wonders how many rounds this young man can last, because no one can fight forever. But with every second that passes, Garrison realizes that Larry is only getting stronger. The boss soon concludes that Larry has a hidden skill. After analyzing his techniques, he recognizes the Demon of Heaven technique. A smile appears on the boss's face. Now he knows that Larry will go to the next world. The old man, inspired, rushes forward again, trying to save Larry. Coming close, Larry thrusts his spear into the ground, causing a shockwave. The wave throws back enemies, although it cannot overcome some obstacles. Larry warns his comrades not to come close, so as not to put themselves at risk. Gritting his teeth, he confirms his words that they will not take a single step forward. Meanwhile, the bandits are restoring their formation and shouting about a new attack. They move forward, counting on the numerical advantage. Larry just smirks as he watches the new wave of enemies. He rushes forward again, destroying them one by one and impaling them on his spear. Larry's eyes glow red, and his opponents, mistaking him for a demon, become afraid. Even allies begin to wonder if this man who fights so fiercely is really their partner. Numerous arrows begin to pierce his back, because no one can repel attacks from all sides. After a while, he finally freezes, realizing that his last opponent, stabbed with a spear, has fallen. The soldiers watching him weep sincerely as they look at their comrade standing on a mountain of enemy corpses. However, a smile spreads across his face, realizing that he has accomplished his task. At this time, the cunning garrison commander continues to watch him, indifferently satisfied with the outcome of events. He is relieved to note that he didn't even have to get his hands dirty to achieve his goal. Immediately after this, he turns to his comrades, explaining that they now need to go on the attack to defend Larry's honor. Once they arrive, all they can do is finish off the remaining enemies who are already too wounded. The garrison commander looks at the lifeless body of the protagonist, still pierced by the spear. Looking around, he tells the warriors that the battle was successful, and suggests that they return home. One of Larry's comrades asks how they can return if they still haven't found the bandits' lair. The boss explains that there are too many bandits, and they are not able to deal with them all at once. The old man turns to his companion and asks why they came here at all when their boss died in vain. The comrade replies that they can still help Larry's blind sister. Immediately after this, they carefully transfer the body of their comrade onto a stretcher in order to preserve it with dignity until their return. Larry, successfully revived, watches them from a small cliff, not hiding his understanding. He is also pleased that his mortality rate has now reached unprecedented heights. A whole stream of knowledge flashes through his head, instantly enhancing his skills. He reflects that it would have taken a very long time to achieve such heights honestly. He then decides to take a little walk, swinging his spear and thinking about what to do to get an even higher rating. Suddenly he freezes, realizing that he has not yet completed all the planned tasks. With these thoughts, he begins to quickly rotate the spear, generating powerful whirlwinds around himself. Taking careful aim, he makes a swift attack on the ant, killing it instantly. Larry looks at the twitching insect carcass and realizes that the quality of death is good for him. He also realizes that it is time to thank his brother for sending him on this deadly mission. Meanwhile, the garrison commander remains in place. His 6 men and comrades suspect nothing. Suddenly he turns to a small tree and asks what is written there. The soldiers explain that this is the same symbol carved by their leader, and sadness appears on their faces. One of them presses himself against a tree, and notes that the chief, sensing an ambush, decided to give the valley its last name. Filled with respect again, the soldiers say that their commander gave his life for them. The garrison commander was clearly unhappy with such veneration of the boy he was about to kill. He asks the soldiers what kind of chaos they are committing, noting something wrapped in cloth. One of them bows and says that this is Larry's body, which they dragged from the battlefield. The boss asks if it is really him. The old man looks angrily at the chief and wonders if he will not even allow the body to be taken away. The chief turns away and declares that the hero's body cannot be left to be torn apart by wild animals. He then offers to send him to the city and promises to help with the funeral. He reflects that Larry has been very useful to him and hopes to meet similar fighters in the future. He believes that the master's mission has been accomplished, and he wonders if the boss will be happy with this outcome. Here he suddenly remembers that Larry had a sister, now completely helpless. He licks his lips, thinking that it's time to take care of such a beautiful girl. Unfortunately for him, his hopes are dashed as he is mortally wounded just moments later. Losing his guard, he does not turn around, and the spear pierces his throat. The astonished soldiers see their commander fall against a tree. In the last moment of his miserable life, he turns around, trying to understand who killed him. He raises his hand to the sky and notices a silhouette on the steep ridge. The probable killer. This man, of course, turns out to be Larry, and the military leader manages to get a good look at him. Surprise fills the leader's bloody eyes, but he doesn't have time to utter a word. A few moments later, the garrison commander finally dies. The soldiers, looking around in fear, realize that they have fallen into an ambush again. The old man turns to his comrade and asks if he saw that very shadow. To make sure they are not asleep, they quickly unfold the cloths and discover that their comrade is indeed dead. One of the partners mentions that he saw a strange bandit, but decides not to bring it up. The soldiers are horrified to realize that they are being attacked by bandits and quickly retreat. They immediately abandon the garrison commander, who has proven himself to be a complete scoundrel, and decide to save their own skins. Larry hides behind a rock to avoid being noticed by the others, and rejoices at how perfectly his plan worked. He reflects that this man was a representative of the 8th rank, but even he could not withstand his blow. He smiles, noting that this time he managed to have complete control of the spear. and the spear entered the target like clockwork. Smiling, thinking about the future, he understands that soon the soldiers will find out who killed their commander and will follow him. He hears the approaching clatter of hooves and realizes that bandits have arrived here. Looking out, he is surprised that the soldiers are running away instead of dealing with the killer of their commander. He hears the hysterical voice of an old man calling on everyone to save their lives and not take unnecessary risks. Realizing that a fortune is being taken away from him, he angrily wonders if this is retribution for helping the old man. After thinking for a long time, he clenches his teeth and realizes that all this is not so bad, because someone came up to him. Turning around, he notices the bandits who have ambushed him, and realizes that now he too could be killed. Larry gets to his feet and says that the bandits only pretended to retreat, but they actually want to set up an ambush. Looking at the bandits, he understands that he is almost invincible, but the bandits do not take this into account. Seeing that he is serious, they run away in fear, realizing that their target is not dead despite the injury he received. Larry tries to catch up with them, saying that he is the older brother of the man they killed. The bandits continue to run away and ask him if he believes that they would believe such nonsense. They talk among themselves, claiming that Larry is probably the ghost who killed the commander. Larry continues to pursue them in the hope of getting the death he longed for. But the bandits do not give him what he wants. Some time passes, and they finally find themselves next to their leader, who has already received reinforcements. This man's aura is truly threatening, so the bandits immediately turn to him for protection. They ask the leader for help, saying that they are facing a real ghost. Larry overtakes them and rushes forward, realizing that if he goes into battle with the leader, he will earn a new mortality rank. Larry briefly loses his head and declares that he has come to avenge his brother's death. To his surprise, the leader of the bandits behaves completely differently than expected. He takes a step forward, then stops, forcing Larry to change his plans. He senses a catch and asks the leader if he is the same Sammy who became famous among the bandits. Sammy just laughs in response and says that his name is known far beyond these parts. However, he does not show aggression, but takes another step forward to greet Larry. He claims that he is indeed the leader of the local gang, and that his name is Sammy. Larry looks closely at Sammy, and notices that he turns out to be quite a handsome young man. Sammy acts politely, like a well-deserved authority among the locals. Larry notices Sammy showing signs of a serious illness, and wonders if the illness is weakening his strength. One of Sammy's subordinates approaches him and informs him that Larry claims to be the brother of the murdered commander. The bandit also says that Larry killed his commander, whom he once served. Sammy chuckles again and notes that this is a man worth talking to. He states that only very brave people could kill their captain, and invites Larry to join them. Larry tries to figure out what the catch is, but Sammy promises to tell him the latest events. Larry asks if Sammy is afraid of revenge for his brother's death, but Sammy just laughs. Then he says with a smile that there is no point in killing each other. It will not change anything. Larry is impressed by Sammy's nobility and agrees that he is right. However, he decides to curb his impulses and find out a few details. He asks why such a noble man became a bandit and engaged in dirty deeds. These words cause discontent among the warriors standing behind Sammy. They begin to grumble, feeling that Sammy is looking down on them and needs to be taught a lesson. Larry enjoys the tense atmosphere and hopes to be attacked so he can get another death. To everyone's surprise, Sammy gestures for the soldiers to calm down and not attack Larry. He then asks Larry, as usual, if he understands why they are in this situation. Larry asks if the robbery is connected with the hunger in the city and the inability to survive. Sammy smiles and confirms that hunger was the cause of the riots. Taking a step aside, he explains that survival has become very difficult, and ideals are difficult for ordinary people to understand. After this, he draws his sword and says that the leader of the bandits wants to help the others. Drawing his sword, he invites Larry to join their squad. Larry looks at Sammy and tries to decide what to do. He makes a face for a moment and says he has to refuse. He states that he wants nothing to do with bandits, but Sammy suggests that he get to know their way of life, so as not to jump to conclusions. Larry says he would gladly accept the offer, hoping that he would die there. His inner voice begins to enjoy thoughts of his future death, because it will certainly be great. Only a quarter of an hour passes, and he finds himself in an improvised bandit camp that resembles a village. Larry shares his observations, noting that he did not expect such organization at the bandit camp. Looking around, he discovers that not only robbers live in the village, but also children and old people. Sammy explains that they are poor, disadvantaged people, and they have taken them in to help each other. He claims that the prosperity of the city of N is an illusion, since many were expelled from there. He adds that the city's ruler only cares about the immortals, and doesn't care about the common people. Larry says he has never met an immortal and has not been able to learn all of their secrets despite mastering their techniques. Sammy smiles and notes that the art of the death fist is a unique skill that not everyone can master. He then politely suggests that Larry move to a more suitable place for conversation and invites him to continue. After walking a few dozen meters, they find themselves in a Taoist temple. Sammy walks up to one of the statues and points to it, saying that it depicts an immortal. Larry asks who it is, and Sammy explains that it is a Taoist master who now lives in the world of immortals. Larry understands that he has entered a completely different world and is unlikely to be able to reach the level of immortal cultivators. Sammy states that immortals and mortals come from the same source, but immortals live in heaven and look down on everyone. He adds that immortals accept servants into their circle and cultivate spiritual roots in them. Sammy sadly notes that if an improper mortal disobeys, he will suffer a cruel death. Larry understands that this behavior is typical of greedy people who view others as cattle, and he considers it unacceptable. Larry wonders if the system can help him fight the immortals, as fighting such creatures would definitely strengthen him. Without thinking, he decides to commit a blasphemous act. Sammy looks at his friend in surprise and tries to understand what is happening. Larry charges forward, declaring that he was born to be free and intends to live that way for the rest of his life. In his head, he made a plan to break the statue and wait for lightning to strike him. Larry says he has been waiting for this moment for a long time and prepares to crush the stone statue. Sammy asks what he is doing, but Larry does not respond to these words. Sammy realizes that this could end badly and decides to intervene. Larry delivers a powerful blow to the statue, which immediately takes effect. Luckily for Sammy, the impact of the blow was partially cushioned by a thrown bag, which blocked some of the momentum. Nevertheless, the spear deftly entered the head of the statue, completing what Larry had started. Before he can recover, the statue's head explodes, sending up plumes of smoke. Larry lands on the ground, turns around angrily and realizes that he was almost interrupted. He asks Sammy why he stopped him, since destroying an immortal is an important step. Sammy replies that he is engaged in magic, not cultivating immortality. Sammy says that immortals must live their lives and can't wait for them all to be exterminated. But incurring the wrath of heaven is bad. Larry irritably agrees that this is exactly what he wanted, surprising Sammy. Sammy asks Larry if he's afraid of immortals, and in surprise, blood starts coming out of his mouth. Larry asks if martial arts can help in fighting immortals. He admits that he has been thinking about this question for a long time. Sammy replies that martial arts harden the body to incredible strength. He explains that cultivating immortality trains the soul and produces serious results with persistence. Sammy says that immortals are strong not only because of their techniques, but also because of their longevity and almost godlike powers. He adds that if a person masters the techniques and gains longevity, he will be able to defeat the immortal. Larry pats his friend on the shoulder and asks him not to get angry, as it will hurt Sammy himself. He speculates that he has the Fist of Immortality technique and the resurrection system, so he is almost invulnerable. With these words, he turns to his friend and says that one can only become immortal in tens of thousands of years. He wonders if Sammy is qualified to cultivate immortality. Sammy states that without spiritual roots, this is hardly possible. Larry looks around and asks the important question: can his staff be used as a source of spiritual energy? Sammy tries to figure out what exactly Larry means, and Larry decides to show off his real treasure. Sammy covers his face with his hands and says that he can hardly help in such matters. After this, he takes the cup with the medicine and asks Larry to leave if he has no more questions. Sammy acknowledges that he understands Larry's good intentions, but is unable to help. In fact, Larry finds Sammy too annoying and would prefer to be left alone. Sammy, being diplomatic, notes that Larry doesn't seem like the type to spend years cultivating immortality. Larry smiles back and continues to think about what steps to take next. Larry says that in that case, he must go about his business and promises not to reveal the location of the village to anyone. Larry thinks about how he needs to go home and fears that if he runs, he will be suspected and killed. After some time, the action moves to the city where Lily lives, and unexpected guests suddenly come to visit her. Henry opens the door and says that their master is the son of the city's ruler, and Larry has proven himself to be a real hero. He also notes that he came with other people to express his gratitude. Henry complains that Lily, despite her beauty, remains blind and is unlikely to be able to have children. Lily asks why Larry didn't come in person. Henry smiles and states without reserve that this man is no more. Lily tries to close the door, demanding an explanation, but Henry doesn't let her. With a characteristic click, he rolls up the fan with which he had been fanning himself all this time. He then knocks on the coffin lid, revealing that Larry died like a dog. Lily steps back in fear and declares that she does not believe such news. She insists that Larry could not have died so easily and believes that she is being deceived. Lily tries to close the door to avoid trouble, but Henry lunges forward again and holds her back with his hand. With his nasty smile, he says that he thought of everything and pulled Larry's body. Immediately after this, he grabs Lily's hand and tries to pull her out of the house. Without ceremony, he kicks the coffin lid and declares that he has brought the body for identification, while Lily tries to break free. Henry grabs Lily's head and pulls it down so that it is next to Larry's head. He happily informs her that if the girl sees nothing, he will describe Larry's body to her. The villain claims that Larry has broken bones and at least 50 stab wounds. Lily, with some effort, pushes Henry's hand and steps back. She insists that all this is nothing more than a cruel joke or a fake. Henry mimics her, claiming that both the coffin and he himself are fake. After a pause, he asks if such words will make her feel better. Lily continues to back away, realizing that Henry clearly does not wish her well. All this is observed by one of the soldiers who fought next to Larry, and feels guilty for not being able to save him. He rushes forward, promising to kill Henry, but the old man stops him, urging him not to be impulsive. He assures that after the scoundrels leave, they will help bury Larry and give Lily money. Henry continues his sadistic bullying and states that Lily can cry if she wants to. He then claps his hands and offers to help the maid cry, while one of the servants approaches him. Henry reports that everyone in town believes in Larry's heroism and offers Lily a piece of his flesh. Lily doesn't immediately understand the meaning of the words, but Henry claims that this way she will touch his courage. With a dissonant grin, he declares that it is time to feed the girl. Lily tries to move away, but Henry's courtiers hold her back. A few moments pass, and the walker that Lily was using falls over. The servants grab her by the arms so that she cannot escape. One of them approaches with a disgusting potion. Coming up, he takes her by the cheeks and insists that she drink everything from the dish. Suddenly, one of the soldiers who previously served with Larry snatches the potion and he drinks it in one gulp. Afterwards, he smiles and calls the drink the best he has ever tried. Henry kicks the soldier and asks how he dared to contradict him. The plate with the potion falls, its contents spilling across the floor. A soldier's comrade comes to the rescue, declaring that the poor fellow is hungry and should not be blamed. Henry looks at them in bewilderment and doesn't understand what they are doing here. To put Lily out of her misery, he falls to his knees and continues to collect the potion from the floor. Larry returns to the city and, observing this disgrace, admits that he has never smelled such an attractive aroma. Henry turns to the stranger and asks who he is. Larry holds his hat and calls the potion very tasty. With a murderous look, he asks if he can get a few spoons. The soldier, recognizing him as Larry, rushes to Lily's aid and asks what all this means. The other bandits are amazed to see Larry and cannot believe what has happened. They turn their gaze to the nearest group to make sure that the dead man has not risen. Upon closer inspection, they see that the coffin actually contains Larry's body. Henry asks in confusion how Larry came back from the dead, while he just chuckles. Without saying a word, Larry rushes forward and holds out his hat to block the attack. Henry doesn't have time to react and doesn't understand what Larry's trick is. Without thinking twice, Larry makes a quick lunge with his spear, cutting the hat into pieces and stopping the weapon a millimeter from Henry's face. The people watching this and Larry's comrades freeze in amazement, realizing that something incredible is happening. Henry's bodyguards intervene, using a strange technique that can deflect spear strikes. Larry feels seriously injured. His hands are covered in blood. He turns his gaze to his opponent as Henry nearly faints from fear. Henry and his comrades hide around the corner, assuming that this is not Larry in front of them. This man is much more ferocious. Henry's bodyguard states that Larry is dead and asks the protagonist who he is. Larry smiles and makes up a name for himself on the fly that is connected to his family. He calls this man his younger brother, for whom he fought bravely, and vows revenge. With these words, he looks intently at his opponents and declares that even if he dies, he will still avenge his brother. Henry's bodyguard is not looking for a fight and promises to impart some important wisdom to Larry. Henry, not wanting to linger any longer, quickly runs away, declaring that next time they will kill Larry, but now they must save themselves. A few seconds later, the vile servants, who had just carried out the master's orders, follow him. Henry's bodyguards snort in irritation and also retreat, realizing that disobeying their master is a crime. Larry watches his opponents and realizes that he needs to die as quickly as possible in order to become stronger. He raises his spear up and says that he will bury his brother tomorrow. Henry's bodyguard listens to these words and suggests meeting outside the city. As the villains flee, Larry walks towards the coffin, noticing that he is hungry. After some time, he comes across a pot of soup in which strange pieces that look like meat are floating. Henry and his friends try to stop Larry by explaining what kind of dish it is. However, Larry manages to drain almost the entire plate of this dish. To reassure them, he says it's pig liver and heart. Not what they think. He adds that his brother's death was violent, and damaged organs will be difficult to present in court. Watching the reaction, he reflects that the adventure was a success. Lily, meanwhile, approaches Larry and puts her hand on his shoulder. Not expecting this, Larry screams and jumps to the side. Rumors are flying around town that Larry's ghost has taken up residence there. Howard asks those who brought the news what they did after seeing the ghost. Henry's bodyguard says that after condoling with Larry's family, the deceased's brother came there. He notes that despite the similarities, these people look slightly different due to the age difference. Howard asks about brother Larry's strength, and the bodyguard replies that he is rank 8 and will soon be rank 9. Howard points out that this is hardly a coincidence, since the Emperor does not tolerate trifles. Turning to his bodyguard, he orders that the roots of the problem be cut out so that these hardships will no longer occur. Meanwhile, Larry tries to come up with a legend to tell his friends. Suddenly he turns around, and strange footsteps are heard behind him. Lily walks straight towards him, as if she has lost her sense of direction. A moment later, she bumps into Larry, which surprises him. Larry coquettishly states that he is about to turn 28, and is still not ready for a relationship. Lily sees through the childish nonsense, and understands that she won't believe these stories even out of politeness. The scene is interrupted by an old man turning to a relative of his colleague. He hands over the payment due to the family of the deceased. Larry asks his comrades if these are really government payments, and they hesitantly confirm that they are. Larry realizes that the soldiers may have collected the money themselves to comfort Lily. With these words, he refuses the purse, declaring that he does not need payments from such a government. Grandfather's comrade takes out the book that Larry promised to help in the battle. Larry looks at the book and realizes that this is a valuable skill that must be learned at any cost. Luckily, the people leave him a book as an apology for not being able to save him and leave. Larry continues to deceive Lily, promising that his brother often spoke about her, and that tomorrow he will fight her family's killers. However, Lily remains silent, not believing this nonsense. Instead, she comes closer and sniffs Larry to make sure. Larry plays hard to get and says now is not the time for games. He adds that he has been training his male strength for many years, and if she continues, it could end badly. Lily asks him to stop being weird and says he needs to stop pretending. She gets angry and says that she didn't expect such a sensitive blind seer. Larry asks if she is a seer and is surprised that she is so sensitive. Lily wonders how he managed to fool all those people, and then suggests that he put on makeup. Larry explains that he was seriously wounded on the battlefield, and his comrades thought he was dead. But later he was lucky enough to meet the leader of the bandits. He says that Lily mentioned her spiritual roots, and reminds him that her family refused to cooperate with the cultivators. Lily admits that she has different views, and therefore could not practice martial arts. After this, she stands up and notes that perhaps she should become an immortality cultivator after all. Larry notes that the idea looks promising, but he may soon lose his drive, and then everything will go wrong. Lily remains silent at the alarming words, comes closer and tries to attract his attention. Stopping in front of him, she asks him to extend his hand to her. Lily adds that the countryside is full of Lord Howard's men, who is himself 6th rank in martial arts, and Larry is too good. So she asks him to give her his hand and walk with her, which causes Larry to try to figure out if she wants to make him her guide. Lily admits that after what she saw, she herself would like to take revenge, but she does not have the strength for such a thing. With these words, she takes out another book and says that tomorrow she will leave the city and embark on the path to immortality. She claims that she has prepared a book for him that can help him learn many techniques. Lily claims that this book is a secret of her clan and is passed down from generation to generation. Larry can hardly contain his joy at such a generous gift and promises to never forget her kindness. Lily is quick to remind that with the gift comes great responsibility. Larry is delighted, but falls silent for a moment, then turns to Lily. He asks her attentively if she has forgotten about the task he offered her. Coming closer, he asks if she has finished reading the book, which makes her feel embarrassed. He extends his hand and says that they both have a path they must take to reach their goal. Exuding confidence, he declares that if they just stand still, nothing will change. Lily listens attentively to his motivational speech and admits that there is some sense in what he says. Having thought everything over, she says that she will wait for him outside the city for a week. She warns him that if he doesn't come, there will be consequences, but she breaks off mid-sentence. A small smile appears on her face, and she says that when he comes, they will continue their journey together. After a while, Larry walks outside the city, looking around and giggling quietly. He notices a small sarcophagus containing the ashes of his former body, and thinks the coffin is too beautiful for him. Sitting down on the ground, he demonstratively shows sadness and asks himself why even his brothers left him. Meanwhile, Henry's bodyguard successfully tracks Larry and gets closer, preparing to strike. Having prepared to destroy the target, he puts on special gloves to perform the unthinkable act. A split second later, he takes off and finds himself inches away from Larry. A moment later, his hand hits something hard and instantly shatters into tiny pieces. It turned out that he missed and hit the coffin, the ashes from which blinded him. Henry's bodyguard wonders if this is a special technique and remembers that Larry himself owned it. Larry rushes into battle and says that even he can use the technique. Grasping his spear, he orders the pitiful old man to die and pierces him with a deadly blow. He notes that the system recognizes such a serious opponent as worthy, so he will receive a lot of points. Henry's bodyguard sighs and says he can handle him, even with his impaired vision. Within moments, Larry feels his bones breaking as if they were made of rotten plywood. Without having time to react, he is sent flying over a deep gorge. Larry knows the fall will kill him, but a smile spreads across his face. Looking at his opponent, he gives him a thumbs up and thanks him for it. Henry's bodyguard watches the madman's flight and tries to understand what motivated this madman. He notices that the two brothers have hastened to desecrate the will of the city's ruler, and for this, they will face death. Taking a step aside, he declares that it is time for him to retire and recuperate. However, when he turns around, he discovers that he is not alone here. The old man is surprised to see in front of him almost the same man he thought was killed. Believing he has encountered another member of Larry's family, he has no idea of his true power. Larry approaches quickly, radiating an ominous aura. Taking a few more steps, he delivers a kick, which the bodyguard miraculously dodges. In response to the counterattack, the bodyguard asks if their family is full of suicides. Larry doesn't achieve much success and falls into the ravine again, blowing a kiss. The bodyguard exhales and realizes that another enemy has been defeated. A moment later, another Larry appears behind him, greeting him and declaring that retribution is coming. The old man looks around in fear and tries to comprehend what is happening. Larry smiles stupidly and says that spring has come, and there is a new fighter in their family. The bodyguard wonders what is going on and who is in front of him, assuming that Larry is a demon or a cultivator. He also wonders if this is all an illusion, since the Wanderer was able to cloud his vision. The deep wound received in the fight with the first Larry makes itself felt, and the outcome of this battle no longer seems obvious. Larry lunges forward, and the bodyguard wonders if he really thinks the pathetic stunt will work. Larry remains silent, realizing that victory will be his, and delivers a powerful blow. The bodyguard wonders where the enemy got such huge reserves of strength and fearlessness. Larry traps him again, and he exposes himself to a powerful blow that sends him flying. However, this time the bodyguard has enough strength to stay on his feet and jump to the side. Taking advantage of the moment, he takes off to capitalize on his success and delivers a powerful punch to Larry's face. The spear slips from Larry's hands and flies into the abyss, but he promises that they will meet again. The bodyguard begins to get nervous, realizing that the situation is getting out of control, and hopes that this is all a hoax. However, the rapidly recovering copies of Larry lead him to believe that he is facing a real demon. The situation gets on the bodyguard's nerves, and he experiences real horror. Turning to his next opponent, he declares that he will never fall for pathetic tricks. Larry replies that it's time to put an end to this once and for all, but the bodyguard maintains his fighting spirit. Larry continues to fight, admitting that his opponent is really good and received considerable rewards for his deaths last time. However, Larry quickly comes to the conclusion that he will now receive much less for this fight, and decides to end the fight. Grabbing the spear fragment he had just used to shatter his opponent's weapon, he prepares to put an end to the matter. Taking the bodyguard by the shoulder, he plunges the spear fragment into his rib and declares that he no longer intends to detain him. The bodyguard grabs a sharp piece of iron, but completely loses the initiative in the fight. Larry lunges forward to push him off the cliff, but is caught in another blow. The unsuccessful move does not prevent Larry from capturing the bodyguard again and throwing him into the gorge, dooming him to death. The tired old man states that no matter whether the person in front of him is a man or a demon, Larry will still not be able to break his will. A moment later, another Larry appears, rushing forward and declaring that he will tell this story in the afterlife. Holding the victim incredibly tightly, Larry says that he will definitely be reborn. He explains that thanks to weekly resurrection, he can now die up to 5 times. The bodyguard tries to break free, but Larry's grip is too tight and he cannot free himself. He makes several more futile attempts, but to no avail. Larry lands a few more punches to weaken his opponent and wear down his stamina. He also grabs him tightly with his legs so that he cannot escape death. Larry declares that he will not allow the enemy to escape from the trap by any means necessary. The bodyguard feels his consciousness leaving him due to the limited oxygen supply. The last thing he sees before he dies are the bodies of his fallen opponents, thrown down one by one. He wonders how it all came to this, and realizes that he didn't expect Larry to have such an advantage. A few moments later, a powerful explosion is heard, and the inhabitants of the forest try to understand what is happening. The smoke clears and they see 2 corpses, one of the bodyguard and the other of Larry. A moment later, Larry revives and reports that the task was completed quite easily. He immediately looks at the mortality rate and notices that the numbers are not impressive. Turning inward, he realizes that he has few new skills yet, and the Kui wave has not yet opened. However, the system rewards him with a new ability to set resurrection points where he can respawn. Larry is delighted with the gift, realizing that he will be able to mislead his opponents with his sudden appearances. Heading into the city, he hopes to change clothes and wash and then go to the ruler. The next moment, he finds himself in the kitchen of Howard's mansion, where the servants suspect nothing. Larry sneaks in and knocks out all the sleeping servants. To disable enemies from a distance, he uses a slingshot with stones, instantly immobilizing them. Looking at the results, he notes that in his many resurrections he has never tried anything like this. Deciding to have a snack, Larry approaches one of the pots and tries the noodles. At that moment, he hears a familiar voice declaring that the guests will first smell the food and then receive the meat. Larry realizes that if he goes in, he will be exposed, which is against the plan. However, he realizes that discovery will lead to his death, which is not a problem for him. To set up an ambush, he closes the doors, angering Henry, who tries to kick them down. Enraged, Henry demands to know who is in the house and orders the doors to be opened immediately. Larry smiles at the dog and notices that the beast wants to eat too. The guards, hearing strange sounds, see only tightly closed doors. Henry feels someone knock him to the floor and tries to understand what is happening. As he rises, he notices the menacing figure of Larry's ghost, leaving him confused. Henry turns to his dog and orders him to rush to his master's defense and destroy Larry immediately. Nevertheless, the main character manages to find a common language with the pet quite easily, and he begins to pet her, noting that he loves dogs very much and has always been friends with them. As the friendly dog runs away, Larry points his spear at the lifeless Henry and orders him to shut up. Immediately after this, he begins asking questions about how many warriors entered the mansion, and receives the answer that there were only 6 fighters. Larry also asks what Henry knows about the Emperor's secret journey that is about to take place. Henry is very surprised by the enemy's awareness and wonders where he gets this information from. Larry calmly replies that the question was only about him. Henry explains that his father said that the Emperor could be in this city for a month, and so everything needs to be done quietly. Larry asks about the travel route, and Henry states that they need to get to their father's office, where they will find out everything that interests them. Larry smiles to himself, realizing that they are trying to lure him into a trap to kill him. Immediately after this, he swings his spear and asks if Henry really thinks he is so important, since he can get the information alone. Henry says that in order to save his life, he is ready to part with the special techniques that he carries with him. Larry shows keen interest and asks what these techniques are and how to access them. Henry explains that the book is called Secret Fighting Techniques and that his father often practices from it. Larry notes that the name is impressive and grabs Henry by the collar. Immediately after this, he declares that he will follow him, but if he sees even one trick, he will finish him off on the spot. After a while, they find themselves in Howard's office, and Larry continues to closely monitor the victim. Seeing the book, he asks why such important information is not locked away, and Henry replies that no one goes into his father's office. Larry dives into reading and realizes that it is an unusual book with no information about weapons or martial arts. Quickly closing the cover, he asks if the work is too thin to be considered valuable. Henry begins to get nervous and notices that there must be something interesting in his father's secret room. Larry agrees to go on a trip to the cache, adding that everything should go without any tricks. Henry carefully opens the doors and looks around so as not to attract unnecessary attention. At Larry's signal, they both go out into the corridor to get to the secret room. Henry warns that the man behind Larry will stand by him until he gets what he wants. As Henry continues to walk and feels Larry's hand on his wrist, he realizes that only this man can help him. The young man suggests that if they can get to the main hall where his father is, they might survive. After some time, the chief of the guard comes out to meet them, who is capable of complicating the situation. Seeing Henry, but for some reason not noticing Larry, he greets his master. Henry tries to signal the chief of the guard, and he realizes that something is wrong. Looking closely, he discovers a strange figure behind Henry that seems familiar to him. Henry is glad that the chief of the guard finally understood his hints. The chief of the guard pretends that he saw nothing, stating that he is an elderly man and married. Henry tries to understand what this means when suddenly a spear strikes his body. The chief of the guard looks on in amazement at the brutal murder, while Larry can't help but smile. A moment later, Howard's son falls to his knees, and the chief of the guard calls what is happening a brutal murder. Grabbing his weapon, he declares that the Lord is in danger. An assassin has entered the palace. Larry smiles and realizes that this is a great chance to increase his mortality rating. A few moments later, he throws Henry's corpse aside and declares that such tricks will not work. However, the fight is interrupted by an incredible aura emanating from the next room. Larry turns around and realizes that he has attracted the attention of the main source of trouble in this town. This source turns out to be Howard, who has come to find out what is going on here. At first glance, he notices the lifeless body of his son lying next to Larry. Looking at Howard's angry expression, Larry knows he has found what he needs. In his opinion, dying in battle with such a person would allow him to ascend to the heavens. However, expectations are too optimistic. Howard turns out to be a much more experienced warrior. He manages to block an upward attack aimed straight at Larry. However, the incredible force of inertia causes Larry to fly to the side. He tries to land softly on his feet but fails. In a fit of masochism, he screams at Howard not to miss the opportunity to finish him off. Howard doesn't respond with a word, but rushes forward to continue the fight. Larry tries to figure out his opponent's style, but only manages to notice an approaching knee. The next moment, his body is sent flying like a light projectile. Having crashed into the wall, he nevertheless thrusts his spear into the rocky solidity to gain a small point of support. Laughing maliciously at Howard's suffering, he notes that such force cannot destroy him. Howard continues the onslaught, landing one punch after another to destroy his opponent. He asks why Larry decided to cross the line and kill his dear son. Larry smiles and states that good must always triumph over evil, no matter what it may be. He also notes that since the universe does not interfere with the order of things, which should be fair, he has no choice. Continuing his battle with Howard, Larry momentarily gains the advantage and declares that he will become justice himself. Howard falls to the ground and realizes that this enemy is not to be trifled with, so he needs to react more actively. Larry makes another attack with his spear, but it is not very effective due to Howard's agility. He is not upset by the fact that the opponent is much stronger, since this will only allow him to level up more. However, Larry tries to continue the fight in order to learn all the secrets and tactics of the fight from his opponent. Trying to surprise the enemy with powerful blows, he suddenly twists his lunge so that it follows an unexpected trajectory. Howard responds with fluid movements, blocking such swift attacks. As Larry prepares to deliver the killing blow, he declares that after his death, he will hang Howard's body from the top gate and expose it to the sun for 10 days. With these words, Howard delivers a crushing blow with his palm, breaking many bones in Larry's body. The attack sends him flying, causing him to break through several wooden walls. Larry, however, remains alive and tries to provoke his opponent to finish what he started. Looking at him with a disdainful smile, Howard declares that he would be glad to receive the finishing blow. Howard gradually loses his composure and orders one of the servants to join the fight. Immediately after this, he delivers several quick, practiced blows to Larry's limbs. Larry realizes that his arms are now completely non-functional, and the same can be said for his legs. The chief of the guard states that apparently the Lord will not leave his son's killer alone. Howard looks menacingly at his worst enemy and says that he has come to cut off his legs. Larry realizes that he doesn't agree to this, because then he won't die, and he dodges. The thought of torture enters his mind, which conflicts with his plans to increase the mortality rate. He chuckles as the battle drags on, and his mouth even gets a little dry. Howard gives his opponent credit, admitting that he is quite interesting for such a scoundrel. Coming closer, he prepares to deliver the finishing blows, noting that he did not expect his opponent to be able to speak after that. Larry smiles and uses the Sky Demon tactic to jump forward. Howard stares in surprise at his opponent who decided to use such a dangerous skill. He understands that his opponent was supposed to die, but he creates new problems for him. However, Howard's agility remains impressive and he dodges the dangerous attack. However, Howard soon realizes that everything was carefully planned and attacks Larry and takes him towards the exit. Having grasped the situation, he decides to retreat as control of the fight slips away. To his great surprise, Howard smashes his head against the stone well with all his might. He and his subordinates watch in amazement, wondering what this man is doing. Left alone with his pain, Howard stabs the stone door, realizing that something is wrong. Cursing angrily, he calls Larry a red bastard who ran away before his eyes. He then turns to the chief of the guard, declaring that Larry's family must be exterminated. Howard's servants, together with the chief of the guard, assure that they will definitely begin to carry out the order. Howard also orders Larry to be found, dead or alive. The chief guard agrees, saying that the order will be carried out as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the action moves to a small area near the river outside the city. Sammy is walking with his friends and looking around, when suddenly something catches his attention. Taking a closer look, they realize that this is the body of a wounded comrade they met recently. Sammy claims to know the man and orders his subordinates to get him out immediately. 3 days had passed since the incident, and rumors began to spread rapidly, of course in an embellished format. According to them, Mr. Henry died heroically in a battle with Larry. However, in reality, ordinary people were praying all this time for the health of Larry, whose location remained unknown. Lily, continuing to hide and watch what is happening, wonders if her comrade will be able to enlist support as easily this time. Moreover, Larry's plans did not go according to plan, as he turned out to be alive and was treated by first-class doctors. Larry comes to and looks at his hands, realizing that the wounds hurt incredibly badly. He looks around and wonders if what happened seems crazy to him, because he didn't expect to be here. Sammy says he's heard of his exploits, adding that everyone is responsible for their own actions. Larry tries to protest and find out why he was saved even though he didn't ask for mercy. Sammy reassures Larry that he understands, but Larry remains angry about what happened. Suddenly, blood starts coming out of his mouth and he asks his friend not to treat him. Sammy is deeply touched by the selflessness of his friend, who, in his opinion, does not want to drag others even to the brink of life and death. To express his incredible gratitude, he grabs Larry's hand, ignoring his own broken bones. He also states that he will not sit back and watch a man die before his eyes, and expresses hope that Larry will pull through. Fortunately for the protagonist, his strength is rapidly leaving him, and even his long-suffering arm, in which almost all the bones are broken, falls to the ground. In his dying thoughts, he asks the Lord God to save him from the presence of a man like Sammy. After 2 more days of intense suffering, Larry finally leaves this world, receiving the opportunity to be reborn nearby. Sammy is deeply moved by the death of a friend he had become friends with in such a short time of communication. The system notifies Larry of a new good mortality rate and an increase in the number of battle points. Larry exhales tensely, noticing that it took him much longer than he planned, but he still managed to die. He notes that the legendary death improved his rating and earned him more points. Holding a small blade of grass in his teeth, Larry rejoices in the fact that he has reached the 7th rank of strength thanks to such a death. Turning to his inner world, he realizes that after the resurrection he feels as if about 10 years have already passed. Having enjoyed himself, he decides to continue his travels, not paying attention to the fact that he may be followed. Sammy carefully placed many agents to observe what was happening and report any information. Suddenly, Larry appears behind the scouts, asking what the hell they are doing here. The frightened scouts ask the stranger how he ended up here and what he forgot. Larry muses that he seems to grow a little older after each resurrection, which explains why he was not recognized. He greets the scouts and gives a false name, claiming that he has come to find his son Larry. The scouts are surprised by the familiar name and try to understand how such a young man can have an even younger son. Larry is mentally happy. The longevity effect is starting to take effect, and he is getting stronger with every second. He gives the scouts useful advice: to go to bed early, to rise early, to train and to use magic. Sometime later, they reach a medical center located in the middle of the village. Larry goes inside and finds his own body in a specially prepared coffin. Sammy tells the scout that Larry died a hero and assures him that there is no need to worry about his valor. Larry notes that the dead are already finished and urges to always hold on to the living. He also states that the damned Howard killed his son, so revenge must be taken. Larry asks Sammy if he would like to cooperate and use the techniques he used on him. He thinks he has gained enough experience to take on Howard. Larry also notes that it would be great if Sammy could help get rid of Howard, but he is prone to absurd behavior. However, the leader of the Bandits expresses his willingness to cooperate, admitting that he is unable to penetrate Howard. Larry states that he does not demand to find Howard immediately, and asks Sammy to wait for his decision about entering the war with the man. With these words, he takes his body and says that he is taking it from here, because he wants to protect the village. Sammy wonders if Larry wants to send his son's body as bait. He also notes that Howard wanted to hang the body on the city gates, which would interfere with its repose. Larry points out that this is good news that could work to their advantage. Smiling angrily, he says that his son's corpse will be excellent bait to lure Howard out. Sammy tries to stop Larry, reminding him that it is his son's body that is being discussed. Larry admits that his thirst for revenge is so great that he is willing to use his son's body as bait. Sammy takes a step back, realizing how people can wallow in their own vices at times. However, he understands that Larry's determination is unmatched and deserves respect. He adds that he will take care of Larry's body and recommends waiting for a favorable moment. Larry notes that the plan has become clearer, and now all that remains is to figure out how to destroy Howard and further increase the rating. Meanwhile, the action moves to Howard's office in the mansion. The ruler is studying the received correspondence when a friend notices that new pigeon mail has arrived. His gaze falls on the scroll, and Howard realizes that even the martial arts masters couldn't find Larry. He wonders if he's been deceived, if there's some great family behind Larry. After some time, a servant enters the office, reporting that Larry's body has been found. Howard immediately stands up and demands to see the body immediately so he can see it for himself. A few minutes pass and a coffin is brought in with the new Larry. Howard looks closely at the dead man and realizes that this is the man he is looking for. The servant says that, according to rumors, the doctor tried to save Larry for several days, but he died in agony. Howard states that this doctor also needs to be checked, adding that he will personally hang the body on the city gates tomorrow. The next day, the guards blockade the city on the orders of the master. Larry watches from afar and comments that Howard is being too aggressive in shutting down the city just for the sake of a torture theater. This doesn't bother him. He has already thought out the battle tactics. To do this, we'll go back in time to when Larry was discussing the attack with Sammy. He said that Sammy and his squad should sneak into the city and create a diversion to distract the guards while he personally went to Howard. At that moment, determination overwhelms him along with cruelty, and he declares that he will cut the throat of this scoundrel. Sammy asked Larry if he wanted to attack Howard alone, but he replied that he had made up his mind and would not be dissuaded. Sammy suddenly noted that this was the most dangerous aspect of the plan, and he was very impressed by the display of determination. Larry stops his friend, explaining that he doesn't want anyone to shine brighter than him. He then admits that he has always loved showing off in front of the crowd, and would like to retain that opportunity. Having calmed down a little, he suggests returning to the plan, noting that there is probably a well on the estate. He also suggests that there must be a passage leading into the mountains. Larry goes searching with Sammy, and they quickly find the secret passage. Sammy explains to his friends that they will now infiltrate the estate and help Larry kill Howard. Meanwhile, Larry finds himself in the mountains, enjoying the stunning views as he prepares for battle. He warms up and understands that his comrades should have already found a passage, which means it's time for him to move out. Looking down, he notes that the height is right. If he jumps from here, he will be dead and useless. Having collected his thoughts, he lifts himself off the ground to commit a beautiful suicide. Rapidly gaining speed, Larry orders the system to revive him at a preset point. Instead of action, he is transported to the outer district of the city, which is about to be attacked. Larry follows the estate, noticing that it has appeared right in the city. Chuckling, he notes that now there is no obstacle for him behind the closed gates, and takes out several copies from the hiding place. A few more hours pass and Howard leaves his estate to complete his plan. The people in the city immediately surround him and look at him angrily. From the appearance of the servants in funeral clothes, the townspeople try to understand why they are carrying the coffin. Howard orders the servants to open the gates and carry out the body. The unceremonious servant knocks off the coffin lid with a powerful blow and exposes Larry's body to the crowd. Immediately after this, he bends down to grab the lifeless corpse and lift it higher. Without hiding his sly smile, he shows the townspeople Larry's disfigured body. The townspeople recognize in this heroic face the one who struck young Henry. They guess that the demonstration ceremony is needed to sow fear in others. The rich people, enjoying what is happening, say that this man deserved to die for invading the estate. The common people do not share their opinion, noting that no one pays attention to the violation of laws by Howard and Henry. The rich turn to the poor, calling them ungrateful thieves and ordering the guards to deal with them. Residents protest, saying no one has the right to abuse the poor and close the city for personal revenge. They send curses to the rich, but they continue to enjoy the reprisals. The rich declare that no poor man dares to approach them and stain their clothes. Luckily, one particularly talkative rich man is pierced by a spear, cutting off his hair. Larry is a real hurricane rushing between the frightened residents and striking the rich people one after another. The poor feel an incredible upsurge of spirit and rush at the rich to beat them up. Howard receives a report from the servants about the panic that has begun. and replies that it does not matter. However, a moment later, a spear charged with incredible energy flies towards him. Howard turns around and barely has time to realize that he should have turned around sooner. Unfortunately for the villain, his reaction is not fast enough and he gets injured. The horse, frightened by the attack, rushes away, throwing off its rider. The servants surround Howard, trying to figure out what's going on. They're clearly under attack. Howard realizes that if he had reacted instantly, the spear would have pierced his head. Larry steps forward and addresses Howard to get his and the servants' attention. He states that Howard would not have dared to kill his son, and now the gallows awaits him for such a bloodthirsty act. Larry adds that his family always pays back for such crimes many times over. Howard is surprised and asks Larry if he is still alive after everything that happened. Larry replies that Howard is wrong. He is the father of a dead son who is avenging him. Howard asks irritably how many more villains are left in the damned family. Larry continues to approach, and Howard's servants, armed with swords, stand up to defend their master. Larry has no problem with unprepared opponents and quickly takes them out one after another. He advises the others not to give up and to attack in order to give him maximum pleasure. He willingly crosses arms with anyone who wants to measure his strength, but always emerges victorious. Even soldiers with whom he previously served end up on his path, but now they are on opposite sides of the barricades. Another daredevil appears, wanting to test his strength against the unkillable Larry. Of course, he meets a tragic end. No one can match Larry in martial arts. The other guards try to attack from afar, aiming their bows to destroy him. Larry lunges forward, spinning his spear at incredible speed to deflect all the arrows. The spearmen line up with their abacuses and put their weapons forward to hold the line. Larry realizes that this is not much of an obstacle and prepares to make a long-range attack. Charging the spear with unprecedented energy, he throws it with enormous force and scatters his opponents one after another. The guards are very scared and wonder who this monster is that has descended upon the formation. The chief of the guard orders the soldiers not to retreat and to continue the battle in order to prevent the defense from falling. Howard wonders if anyone in this impudent man's family is afraid of death, and why his mad dog hasn't been stopped yet. He also notes that this young man looks very similar to Larry, despite the age difference. Larry taunts his victim, stating that he will not let his target go that easily. The chief of the guard draws his weapon and asks the gentleman to retreat, assuring him that he will detain this scoundrel. He rushes forward, accepting Larry's challenge to gain more experience. However, he tries to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, explaining that he is avenging his son, and the chief of the guard has nothing to do with it. The chief of the guard emphasizes that the master's son destroyed Larry's son and deserved to die. Larry claims that this scoundrel was bullying the residents, and his son was just doing everyone a favor. Larry asks the chief guard if he is the family's watchdog and wonders how well they feed him. The chief of the guard tries to take offense, but made a fatal mistake in battle. In a fight with such a high-ranking master, every mistake costs a lot, and he receives a half-fatal blow. This warrior's morale remains high and he takes up arms. Clutching the iron shaft of the spear tightly, he declares that the enemy will not step forward again. Larry notes that such loyalty is commendable, but unfortunately, the guard chief's masters are real bastards. The soldiers watching the events are surprised that the 7th-rank warrior did not last even 10 seconds. Howard suddenly approaches Larry and praises his subordinate for his efforts. However, instead of a reward, the faithful servant gets what is due to overly loyal people. Howard stabs his friend, intending to hurt Larry. Larry looks at his body in surprise and realizes that he will not recover from these injuries. His gaze becomes stern. He was deceived this time, but it doesn't change anything. As he falls, he thinks about how next time he will get to Howard and finish him off. The chief of the guard falls lifeless, as does Larry's next corpse. Howard starts laughing and states that the man was a dud against the city's ruler. He loudly claims that no one will stop him, even if hundreds of Larrys are sent here. Meanwhile, Larry's mortality system wonders what the rating of this attempt was. The system informs him that he has set a new record and has been given the opportunity to freely distribute points, warning that he will now live less. Larry is outraged that no one warned him about the downside of the system, although he guessed about such conditions. He remembers that if he achieves mastery in the Fist of Immortality, it will have a positive effect on his life. He also understands that the key to immortality is to become a cultivator. Holding his weapon tightly, he thanks the system for the high fatality rating. Otherwise, he would be very upset. Taking a decisive step forward, he declares that this is not the time to sit here, but to finish off Howard. Howard receives bad news that something is wrong at the estate. He promises that the unknown group of people who appeared out of nowhere in the yard will be suppressed. The servants report that the saboteurs took advantage of the gap in the security, killed everyone, and took control. Howard angrily orders an army to be called in to retake the estate. However, he soon encounters a rebellion of ordinary citizens ready to take up arms. The townspeople shout that they will not let Howard go. They must avenge the hero Larry. Howard calls them bugs and prepares for the unthinkable. Raising his sword, he orders the bows to be fired to destroy the rebellion. He emphasizes that he does not want to see a single commoner alive. Archers take aim and prepare to unleash a hail of arrows on the civilians. Luckily, help arrives. Larry moves between the lines with incredible speed. Seeing Larry's reappearance, the townspeople rejoice that their hero has returned. Howard asks how this is possible, since he killed Larry with his own hands. Larry merely orders Howard to prepare for death, then rushes forward. The common people follow the example of the idol, and the guards are at a loss, not knowing what to do. However, looking back, Howard discovers that Larry's comrades have long since fled, saving their lives. Most of the guards leave the same way, fleeing the rebellion. Howard tries to bring the troops back into line by threatening execution for disobedience. His threats have no effect, and the soldiers advance on him with incredible determination. Then, by some miracle, he manages to block a swift thrust of a spear that is aimed straight at his face. Larry is talking about the fact that Howard is right now looking at the result of his actions that brought him to this point. Howard realizes that he is not going to give up so easily, and wonders if Larry really thinks he can beat him. Immediately after this, he transmits his sword with incredible energy and knocks the attack off course, receiving a slight wound in the process. Larry is amazed that this man has incredible energy even after being hit hard by a spear. Howard angrily attacks Larry, saying that it is his fault that everything he spent years building has collapsed. Continuing to deliver effective sword strikes to his body, he says that he will kill every degenerate from his family that he meets. Larry doesn't have time to dodge such swift blows and receives more and more damage. Feeling his limbs begin to go numb, he falls to one knee, leaning on his spear to somehow support himself. Howard waves his sword and says that everything is over long ago and it is time to stop resisting. With these words, he rushes forward, performing another energy attack, and orders his opponent to die. To the surprise of this scoundrel, the blade misses its target and is intercepted by a simple hand. Larry passes a huge amount of energy through his body and gradually rises to his feet. Howard wonders how the man could catch the sword with his bare hands, assuming his technique had been figured out. Larry smiles and says that if this had been his first fight, he really wouldn't have coped. Immediately after this, he rushes forward and says that fortunately, this is their third meeting, so he has already managed to learn all about his weaknesses. Howard looks at his opponent in surprise, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. He gradually begins to understand some things, but it is too late, because Larry seizes the initiative. Rushing forward, he pierces his opponent with a powerful spear, this time hitting straight into vital organs. Immediately after this, he draws his weapon to inflict as much damage as possible. Howard falls to his knees and says that all this time he was a real fool, because he could not get to the most obvious thought. Larry smiles and says that it was him all along, but no one else hears it. Without thinking twice, he raises his spear and says that Howard is finally dead, and his killer is Larry's hero. The moment of glory allows Larry to stand on his feet a little longer, despite the fact that he has serious injuries. After a few more moments, the blood loss makes itself felt, and he realizes that he will no longer be able to leave here alive. With a satisfied smile, he falls to the ground, hoping that this time his death will be rather quick. He smiles and says that there is nothing more perfect than dying in front of a crowd, and that is worthy of another A rank. Sammy immediately runs up to his friend and wonders if everything will be explained in order later, which causes him to have a real panic attack. He immediately grabs it, because this time he will be able to save the hero's life. Larry mentally curses his savior, realizing that he has become friends with the most heartfelt jerk. A few more days pass, and Larry continues to feel incredibly irritated that he was not allowed to die. Sammy, on the contrary, is happy and constantly fusses around his friend, thereby compensating for the feeling of guilt for the loss of his son. He also says that his QE channels are almost completely damaged. There is not even a tenth of the energy left. He also states that Larry should not despair, as he will definitely get out of this situation. Larry realizes that it's time for him to move on, and says he needs to get some fresh air. Sammy asks him if he wanted to find his body, and Larry realizes that he completely forgot that his body was lying on the street. Sammy praises Larry for making such a high-quality fake of his body to fake his death. He also says that there is no need to worry about this. They buried him, and the city will not forget this noble sacrifice. Larry gradually moves away and says that he would like to know if there is any martial arts clan around town. Sammy says that he doesn't know of anything like that, but there are several other clans in the prefecture. Larry immediately realizes that it is now clear to him why he has been drawn to the north since he began studying the legendary martial arts. Larry says that in that case he is going to this prefecture and asks Sammy to take care of the city. Sammy asks him if he is sure about this, to which he replies that it is unlikely that anything will change if he stays here. He needs to travel. Sammy says that if Larry still intends to leave, then he will write him a letter of recommendation. He also states that he has one acquaintance in those areas who is a civil servant, so he will easily find a suitable job. Larry asks him how he was able to make friends while being a gangster, to which he replies that they once worked together. Larry asks to change his name slightly on this letter of recommendation so as not to attract unnecessary attention, and Sammy agrees to this. Immediately after, he hands him this letter, wishing him a safe journey, to which he replies that Sammy is a good guy and deserves better. With these words, he offers to divide their spoils, which they have just obtained by plundering the estate. With these words, they look back at the huge mountains of gold that they were able to carry out from there. Sammy states that he cannot believe that Howard stole so much money from ordinary people. Larry, meanwhile, throws himself into a huge amount of gold, without thinking at all about the poor residents. Pulling himself together and wiping away his drool, he turns to Sammy and tells him that he can take absolutely everything that is here. He also says with sadness in his voice that many city dwellers are exhausted by life in this city, and they cannot leave everything as it is. He also claims that the government may soon send a new manager who will be even worse than Howard. With these words, he puts his hand on his comrade's shoulder and says that it is he who must lead this city and achieve everything he wants. Sammy is very impressed by such an inspiring story, and realizes that he cannot control his feelings. He calls Larry an incredibly noble man because he gave up a huge amount of gold. Larry smiles and remarks that he doesn't actually plan to leave empty-handed. He plans to take the book with him. Sammy says it's a good choice, as the infinite path of immaculate yang is an ancient technique. Larry studies the book carefully and comes across one incredible obstacle. According to the description, a person practicing this technique should not experience feminine warmth and other pleasures of this kind. Larry wonders how a young man in his prime can withstand such an ordeal. At this point, Sammy hands him a scroll and asks what he thinks about transforming a mortal body. He then immediately adds that this is a modern technique developed by a legendary warrior, which contains many useful techniques. Sammy explains that this technique allows one to change the length of one's limbs and also take on the appearance of other people. Larry quickly grabs the scroll, thanks Sammy for his help and says goodbye to him. He also adds that they will definitely meet again, and this thought visibly cheers up Sammy. After some time, Larry reaches the designated place where he expected Lily to be. He quickly opens the door, calls her name, and wants to talk about what happened. However, at first the place seems abandoned to him, and he begins to doubt whether Lily has left here. At that moment he hears quiet but rapidly approaching steps. Lily cuddles up to him and tells him that it hasn't even been a week, which means she couldn't have left without him. Larry grins and notes that it was on the 7th day that he managed to defeat that damn old man Howard. Looking at Lily, he wonders why she is dressed so strangely. There is an awkward pause between them, and they both realize that they will probably have to separate for a while. Larry says he wants to go to the prefecture to find the missing piece of the immortal fist. He smiles and notes that it's a funny coincidence, since she was also going there. Larry asks if this is just an excuse to spend more time with him, to which Lily replies, no. Larry says he finds this hard to believe, but Lily says she doesn't care, and sets off on her way. After some time, Larry gets to the right place and presents a letter of recommendation. The manager looks at him in surprise and asks why he looks so healthy, since the letter says that he should be wounded. Larry explains that he walked for a long time and hides the fact that he actually died along the way, but managed to reach the initial level of the infinite path. The manager asks where Mr. Sammy is now, and someone replies that he lives in the mountains and is difficult to find. The manager reads the letter and says that he will not ask further questions unless there is new information in it. He adds that he recognized the handwriting and trusts it, because if it were not for the recipes written in this hand, he would have died many years ago. He then states that since Sammy vouched for Larry, it means that he is a reliable person. After that, he says that right now they need a constable. Larry smiles, realizing that as a constable he will be able to move freely around the city and gather information on the fighting families and clans. After a short time, he starts his new job and introduces himself to his colleagues. The rest of the guard are surprised that Larry managed to achieve such a high rank so quickly. Suddenly a girl appears behind him, demanding that he be quieter. She turns out to be the first constable named Igni, and she urges the others to treat the newcomer more politely. She also says that it's time to discuss the case of the Wu monster, who is terrorizing these parts. Larry asks in surprise what's going on, and Igni explains that the monster has already claimed many lives. She adds that many warriors tried to deal with him, but he turned out to be stronger than even 5th and 6th grade fighters. After taking a few steps, she wearily remarks that they will have to cooperate with the Sheng clan. Larry recalls that after Lily's family was destroyed, a Sheng temple was built on her land, and most likely this clan is connected to the association. He muses that perhaps it is through them that he will be able to find out where the second part of the immortal fist is. Meanwhile, Igni falls into despair and wonders why they were given such a dangerous job. Larry turns to his colleague and asks why everyone is reacting so strangely. A colleague explains that their leader is the strongest among them, but even she has only reached rank 7. At this point, their conversation is interrupted by a strange girl who has flown in on a paper swan and declares that she has arrived on time. Upon seeing her, Larry immediately realizes that this is the Moon Fairy. The girl comes down and says that they will have to fight the monster, but the task is different. Winking, she informs them that she can't do it without their help. They just need to track the beast and tell her its location. Everyone responds enthusiastically to this request, and thanks her for her concern. Igni is surprised by such a sudden rise in spirit, and her colleague warns her not to act recklessly. Larry muses that this is a simple task for the Immortal, but for some reason the Moon Fairy cannot do it herself. She explains that the monster feeds on death energy, meaning it can only be found near hospitals or prisons. The constables, charmed by her words, say that using living people as bait is a little against the rules. The Moon Fairy replies with surprise that these people will die anyway, which means they can serve society before they die. Igni asks what she plans to do with the monster after capturing him, and the girl replies that for his sins, he will remain to serve them for the rest of his days. Igni says that this monster killed many innocent people, and therefore should not remain alive. She also notes that this law only applies to common people, while monsters and demons are under the jurisdiction of immortals. Larry raises his hand to vote and asks the Moon Fairy to ask a question. Smiling, he wonders what will happen if they accidentally kill the monster when they discover it. Igni turns to his colleague in surprise, trying to understand why he is acting so defiantly. The Moon Fairy smiles and says that it is too dangerous to fight such a monster, so they should just report its location. Larry notes that a situation may arise in which the monster chases them, and then they will be forced to engage in self-defense. Smiling, he asks her if there is a reward for killing this monster, such as a tour of the Immortal clan. The Moon Fairy is silent for a moment, then announces that the lands of the Immortals are not open to visitors. She also states that such holy places do not tolerate plebeians on their territory who do not understand anything about higher matters. Larry reflects that he is dealing with arrogant bastards again, and it looks like he will have to find another way to explore this place. Meanwhile, the Moon Fairy summons her transport and says that she gives them 3 days to find the monster. Without another word, she rushes upward, leaving the heroes alone with their thoughts. The constables ask Igni if they really have to collect dying people as bait, to which she replies that they don't have to do that. Initially, she instructs them to explore the mountains, looking under every stone, and if they discover anything unusual, immediately report it to her. The constables immediately head to the monster's supposed habitat, but Igni asks Larry to stay. She tells him that the manager has always been a man of sound judgment, which means that if he hired Larry, he really has some good skills. Larry smiles and remarks that he is clearly being overestimated, adding that he simply asked the Immortal One's simple question. Igni looks at his interlocutor carefully and asks if he is sure about this, to which he replies that he is completely sure. Immediately after this, she says that in that case he can go on a mission, and Larry smiles and thinks about what could become bait. The action moves to the eastern part of the city, to a tavern called the Drunken Immortal. Local residents are closely watching what is happening and looking around to avoid becoming the monster's next victim. Suddenly, there is a knock behind the tavern manager, and he announces that the visitor can enter. A handsome young man enters the room and says that they have news regarding the necessary target. The manager orders his subordinate, Chester, to continue the story. Chester claims that their spy assigned to the manager reported that someone named Larry had appeared at the State House and received an appointment. He also says that rumors have begun to circulate that Sammy may have taken the path of the Immortal. The manager declares that this is complete nonsense and picks up a cup of his favorite tea. He also notes that this man has always hated immortals with every fiber of his soul, and therefore is unlikely to want to become one of them. Chester counters that people change, and while Sammy has kept quiet for decades, he's suddenly recommended someone. The manager orders a meeting to be arranged, and in the meantime, the story moves to one of the many temples. Lily meets with her friend, who says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. She claims that decades have passed, but fate brought them together again. Lily approaches Elder Alicia, who says she heard about the tragedy that happened to her family. She also adds that if Lily wants to join the Immortal clan, she can stay here and continue developing her skills. Lily agrees to this proposal and says that she is very happy with this chance. Lost in her thoughts, she wonders what Larry is doing right now. During this time, Larry spends wonderful and very eventful hours behind bars. One of the guards tells him that he should behave decently, because with his tricks, even 10 lives won't be enough. Larry smiles and says that this is where he belongs if he wants to find the monster he needs. To understand how he ended up in this strange situation, the story moves back a few hours to the Jade Tea House. One of the establishment's employees says that at that moment a hero named Larry shouted as if he was a warrior, and his path led only forward. Larry was actually there, and was surprised that people would be interested in such things when there was a monster roaming the city. He is annoyed that he failed to find out about the monster, and instead he only became confused in his own thoughts. At this moment, a man approaches him and says that even during working hours, the prefecture likes to listen to fables, and this is strange. Looking at him in surprise, Larry wonders if he is being lazy and avoiding his responsibilities. Irritably, he asks the stranger if he really thinks he knows how he should work. Larry reflects that the energy flows already indicate that he is facing a serious opponent. He then asks them why they thought he was idle, adding that in that case they could give advice to the Emperor. Chester tries to take a step forward and calls the protagonist a real moron, but the stranger interrupts him. Opening the fan, he says that he wants to get an answer to one question. Looking closely at Larry, he wonders what kind of person he imagines the Emperor to be. Larry muses that he prefers such people only in dead form. He recalls trying to ambush him, but he never showed up for some unknown reason. Studying the stranger carefully, he guesses that most likely, the person in front of him is a government official. He understood that if he insulted the Emperor, he would certainly be led to the chopping block, which meant that death was inevitable, especially if his words became known to the entire empire. At that moment, Larry jumped up in his chair with joy and exclaimed that he saw in this Emperor a ruler for 1,000 years to come. The people in the establishment stared at the weirdo in surprise, trying to figure out what he was doing. The stranger asked Larry if he overestimated the Emperor, despite his high rank. Larry replied that the Emperor had a reason for holding that title, but despite his position, he still went to lick the boots of the Immortals. Chester looked at Larry in surprise and wondered if he really dared to call the gentleman a coward. The stranger stated that the Immortals were an indestructible force, and even the strongest martial artists did not stand a chance against them. In response, Larry noted that compromising was for the weak and helpless. However, if retreat was necessary to gather strength and then strike back, that was a different matter. After this, he reminded everyone that he had recently arrived from a city where people were dying of hunger. He also reported that the ruler knew about this situation, but instead of helping, he only raised taxes. Larry then stood up and loudly declared that the Emperor constantly claimed to rule in the name of heaven. He added that for the Emperor, ordinary people are just meat that can be used up if the Immortals so wish. He concluded sadly by saying that he expected nothing else from the Son of Heaven who puts himself above all others. At this point, Chester intervened in the conversation and declared that all this was nothing more than absurd. Larry, heated up, began to argue with him and claimed that everyone had known for a long time that the Emperor danced to the tune of the Immortals and built luxurious residences for them. Chester got involved in the altercation while the townspeople watched with interest, wondering where this young man had come from. The stranger, who was apparently the Emperor, smiled at this turn of events and assumed that his identity had been discovered. He also recalled that former Justice Minister Sammy held a similar opinion. He remembered that he had chosen to die rather than surrender to the Immortals, and now everything was developing exactly as Sammy had predicted. Then Chester grabbed his weapon and reminded that according to the laws of the Empire, a person who insulted the Emperor was subject to beheading. However, Larry just smiled and said that he did not take back his words and was ready to answer for them. The Emperor immediately raised his hand and ordered his subordinate to calm down. Immediately after that, he turned and left, declaring that Larry knew nothing about government. Larry looked after him in amazement, not believing that after such a performance they would simply let him go. Looking at the departing aristocrats, he frantically went over in his head all the possible insults he could utter to them. Suddenly a guard burst into the room and demanded to know where Larry was. Larry happily declared that he was the troublemaker. The guard said that he was accused of insulting the Emperor, to which Larry calmly replied that he would not resist, and was ready to go with him. On the way, he asked the guards where exactly they were going to execute him, adding that he would like to die in front of a large crowd. One of the guards slapped his hands and said that everyone here was on death row, so all he could do was await the verdict. Larry calmed down a little, and even began to enjoy the fact that he was at least in the right prison. Looking around, he realized that the very same monster must be here. After all, it feeds on the energy of people like himself. Taking a closer look, he noticed a strange man who looked as if he was extremely unwell. This man clearly saw something terrifying and already had a premonition of his imminent death. A giant shadow appeared in front of his face, surprisingly looking like a cat rather than a monster. The furry little animal silently crept up on its victim with the soft grace of a cat. Having reached almost close, the strange creature began to meow, as if it really were an ordinary cat. The prisoner let the creature closer, deciding that it was just a kitten, and wondered how it got there. The kind-hearted man picked it up and muttered that with this ominous aura of death, this place was worse than hell, and they had better get out of here. However, a moment later, the old man collapsed to the floor, unable to withstand contact with the creature. Larry looked at the fallen old man with concern and asked if he was okay, to which he assured him that everything was fine. He also revealed that in the past he was known as the Saint Thief and robbed the rich to help the poor. According to him, in his youth he could last 100 rounds against the strongest martial artists. He even boasted that as a child he was able to rob the cart of an incredibly rich merchant. The death throes ended. The old man fell dead, and his soul left his body. Larry watched what was happening closely, and suddenly noticed that the cat began to behave very strangely. His attention was drawn to the unusual aura emanating from this kitten. A stream of dark energy immediately rushed into the body of the deceased. Larry shouted at the cat in fear, and asked what the hell she was doing, but she immediately jumped out the window. He broke down the doors of his cell and ran to the nearest man, realizing that he had no pulse. After quickly examining the body, he came to the conclusion that the man was indeed dead. Remembering Igny's words, he realized that death strengthens the monster. He looked towards the creature and realized that it was the very monster that everyone was talking about. For a moment, he thought how ironic it was that the monster had chosen to take the form of such a cute cat. However, this is definitely not a coincidence. The monster came here for a reason, and Larry tried to lure him to himself so that he would kill him. The creature looked at Larry in surprise and even made a questioning meow. From the monster's point of view, the man in front of him possessed an incredible supply of deadly energy. Unable to cope with the incredible hunger, the cat rushes forward, baring his claws. Larry also rushes into the attack, saying that now a fight to the death will begin. However, to his surprise, the cat turns out to be not at all aggressive, and immediately sits on the main character's hand. Larry tries to figure out what the hell is going on here, and why the cat suddenly went from angry to sweet. He tries to tear the cat away from him and asks him why he stopped being a bloodthirsty monster. Meanwhile, the cat continues to demonstrate incredible cuteness, thereby confusing our hero. After some time, an interesting thought occurs to him that the cat has stuck to him precisely because, most likely, he will soon die. Several guards enter the cell and say that it is time to go to the chopping block. The executioner passes by the other cells, and it is said that this man has publicly insulted His Majesty. He also states that one can be sure that no criminal has ever escaped from this dungeon. Larry is told that he would like to go to execution right now, but the chief claims that there was a misunderstanding. He immediately opens the door and says that he is now free, which causes confusion in the main character. Larry yells at them loudly and asks what the hell is going on here, since he tried so hard to get here. They tell him that they did not handle the case properly, and even if he had been able to escape, no one would have prevented his escape. He also reflects that this man had enough strength to break the bars, but he did not do so. Larry finally says that he would like to ask one question to the guard commanders. He says that the man fell and hit his head and died, so he should be buried with dignity, to which the chief replies that they will take care of everything. Larry continues to look around and wonders where that mysterious cat has gone. After some time, he finds himself at a reception with the manager, who scolds him for the fact that he has already been arrested. He also states that he has been arrested, adding that all his actions directly reflect on the State House. Larry says he allowed himself to be arrested in order to conduct an investigation in prison, adding that he did not act out of selfish motives. For a few moments the manager calms down, saying that in this case, everything is clear to him. In fact, this is a trap, and he begins to ask him with even greater irritation whether he really considers him an idiot. Igni decides to intervene in this squabble in order to bring some constructiveness. She says that the gentleman had to use his powers to get Larry out of jail. Larry thanks his boss for making such sacrifices for him, wishing he were dead. The manager reflects that although he tried to pull the man out, the official told him that it was an order transmitted by the guards of the Winged Fish. He understands that this faction is directly subordinate to His Majesty, which means that this is an order from the Emperor himself. The manager wonders whether the Emperor himself asked to be insulted, and is in fact a follower of strange practices. Deciding not to dwell on these thoughts for too long, he says that they need to get back to business, and asks Larry if he saw the monster. Larry says that this monster looks like a tricolor kitten that appeared next to the dead prisoner and swallowed the energy of death. Igni says that the monster they are looking for does indeed appear near the dead, so it's a 100% coincidence. Igni also states that claw marks similar to those of a tiger were found on the victims, to which Larry replies that the monster he found had nothing to do with it. Immediately after this, he makes a bold assumption that this monster probably absorbs the energy of an already deceased person and does not kill anyone himself. Igni wonders if he means to say that there is another monster out there somewhere. In order to understand what this mystery is, we will be transported for a while to the island of the Immortals. It is on it that a giant tiger rages, possessing wings and representing a very formidable animal. Two immortals try to tame him and say that they cannot cope with a flying tiger. The Moon Fairy approaches her subordinates and tells them that they must stop whining, since it is their duty to protect the sacred animals. In her mind, she calls them idiots, wondering how she can show her superiority without this creature going wild. She also understands that if she can handle this, she will definitely advance in her career. Night falls, and Igni informs his comrades that the goal of their operation is to catch an unpredictable monster. She also adds that Constable Larry saw him at the Western prison last night, so the search needs to be concentrated in the western part of the city. After finishing the briefing, she says that it is time to begin carrying out the task. Larry patrols the area and quickly attracts the attention of a creature that is attracted to death. His shadow gradually becomes darker, and suddenly a strange window jumps out of it. A good-natured kitten jumps towards Larry and tries to attack him, playing at hunting. Larry kneels down to pet the kitten and asks him if he is really an endless supply of food. He also states that this kitten reminds him of his sister Lily, who, however, is much cuter than the clingy kitten. After a while, Igni appears next to him, asking him what he is doing here and who this strange cat is. Upon seeing a stranger, the cat immediately runs away and heads in an unknown direction at incredible speed. Larry tries to catch up with this cat, saying that this is the same demon he was talking about recently. Igni tries to catch up with the creature, while Larry informs her that the cat is heading to the western borders of the city. A few more minutes of this strange chase pass, and they come to a very large gate. The kitten's trail disappears for a while, and he himself disappears from sight even from the skilled eyes of the constables. Larry, realizing that this creature could have hidden from them in the first second, comes to the conclusion that it seemed to have brought them here on purpose. Igni says that this place is the territory of a newly formed gang called the Crimson Waters. She also states that there is a very powerful warrior living here who should not be underestimated. Larry smells a very strange aroma and realizes that something is very unclean here. He tells his colleague that he smells a bloody stench, so they must go there to investigate. Some time ago, in the courtyard of this building, the leader greeted Madame Immortal in order to find out what she needed. He also said that it was a great honor for them to serve one of the 9 great immortal clans. The Moon Fairy says that they will still have a chance to prove themselves. adding that nevertheless, there is very tough competition. She also states that he is not the only one who wants to join the Immortal clan, so she cannot agree so easily. With these words, she releases the mad tiger, informing him that he must fight it, but it should not cause him much trouble. The leaders of this group take some time to back off, trying to figure out if the benefits are worth the effort. The Moon Fairy says that he can always refuse, although his personal life is at stake. The leader of the group also says that he is not afraid of anything and will try to control himself. A little later, he is defeated in battle with this monster and asks for mercy, as well as compassion from the Immortal. The Moon Fairy smiles and says that the monster he is looking for will definitely want to feast on the energy of a 6th-class warrior. She also states that it is necessary to leave this person alive, because if he is killed prematurely, this death energy will dissipate. However, the mad tigers looking at her suddenly refuse to obey her words. The Moon Fairy wonders why these tigers do not obey her, suggesting that the energy of this young man has instead corrupted them. A few moments later, she hears a mysterious meowing behind her, which belongs to this very animal. The Moon Fairy happily takes out the bag, saying that she knew perfectly well that this creature would appear here. She orders him to jump into his cage, but the tiger rushes into battle. Not listening to its owner, the heated animal tries to destroy its competitor. The Moon Fairy realizes that the situation is extremely bad, as the tiger cub has entered berserker mode. The giant white cat begins to rip and thrash in an attempt to snatch its prey and attracts the attention of Larry and Igni. The chief constable says something is going on upstairs, and Larry tries to figure out where the demon tiger came from. Igni rushes forward to open the doors and invites him to follow her. Using her strength, she kicks down doors with incredible ease. After taking a few dozen more steps, she tells her comrade that they are late at the crime scene, looking at the body of the dead warrior. Igni says that this tiger is a monster raised by a clan of immortals, and these animals are usually controlled by humans. Larry asks her if it is really the Immortal clan that is behind all these murders. Thoughts begin to flash rapidly through his head, and he realizes that he must act as decisively as possible. Meanwhile, the giant tiger tries to destroy its prey, and it almost succeeds in achieving the desired result. Larry rushes forward to rescue the kitten and carry him to safety. Landing softly on his feet, he jumps back a few more meters, and it is said that the hero, saving the kitten, acts magnificently. Unfortunately, while delivering this entire pompous monologue, he completely forgets that the tiger has wings and is faster than a man. Igni intervenes in the battle in order to save his colleague, who has only spent a couple of days on duty. Even after reaching incredible speeds, she still manages to save him by grabbing his hand and pulling him out of the line of attack. She reports that the demon is too strong and they are unlikely to be able to deal with it. Throwing him aside, she says that she is distracting him so that he can bring reinforcements. However, this tiger turns out to be too strong even for such a warrior and immediately attacks her. Igni tries to turn around in time to carry out some kind of counterattack or dodge. However, a moment later she realizes that her attempt was in vain. And this is the end. An expression of understanding appears before her face, that in a little while she will go to the next world. Fortunately, at the last moment a real hero comes to the rescue, who throws the tiger away with one blow. Larry apologizes to his selfless queen and says that he cannot allow this to happen. Filling his body with incredible energy, he says that he cannot let her die instead of him. Igni says that he should have run away, to which he replies that it is better for her to do that, and for him to do the tiger. Chester continues to watch what is happening and wonders why these crazy people haven't escaped yet. Chester also understands that his master asked him to keep an eye on these people, and it would be bad if they died here. He also realizes that he can't just intervene because the real culprit is still here. With these words, he turns his gaze to the giant tower, which is being charged with the light of the moon. The Moon Fairy looks on indifferently and wonders how the lousy constables dared to stand in her way. She smiles and says that in any case, for the tiger cub, a 6th-class warrior is just a light snack. Chester continues to monitor what is happening and understands that it is not in the Emperor's interests to start a conflict with the Immortals right now. Thus, he comes to the conclusion that it is necessary to wait for the right opportunity and not to act impulsively. Larry, meanwhile, continues to fight the giant tiger, preparing to destroy it. However, this task turns out to be not the easiest, because the attacks of this creature cause colossal damage. Larry notes that one blow from this tiger almost instantly destroyed his energy barrier. He is very happy about this, because if he dies from his claws, his mortality rating will be high. The tiger goes crazy, smelling fresh blood, but the main character only welcomes such animals. Unable to control his incredible bloodlust, he releases a whole stream of wind forward that can cut through anything. Larry smiles and asks the Lord God to take his mortal body into his arms to resurrect him again. However, after a few moments, he feels the touch of the body of his colleague, who decided to save him once again. Igni asks him why the hell he's frozen and advises him to dodge. She also says that this monster is too serious, and they won't put up a head-on collision against it, so they'll have to rely on technology. She also says that she will now teach him the shadow step technique, and performs several quick evasive maneuvers. Larry reflects that it is quite difficult for him to learn such techniques in this position, since he can hardly see anything. To find out how much progress he has made, He goes to the system window and tracks the learning percentage. Within moments, he receives a notification that his training is almost complete, and he is achieving such efficiency. Igni intervenes, unleashing a powerful energy-emitting attack on our heroes. Igni realizes that it is time to act more decisively, grabbing for her dream, hoping that she will be able to damage this monster. Putting all her strength into this blow, she brings down the steel power on the tiger. However, the sword only breaks into pieces. Igni, surprised, reflects on how this tiger's internal energy is so great that normal weapons are useless against it. She also understands that it is not possible to defeat him using Shadow Step. The Moon Fairy smiles and says that these concepts are overestimated for themselves, since these are sacred animals, and neither water nor fire can even hurt him. She advises mortals to accept that they will be eaten. As for them, it will be a real part. Igni, meanwhile, decides not to give up, no matter what, and continues to fight this monster. Larry, meanwhile, completes his Shadow Step training and takes off at speeds he never dreamed possible. He also discovers that the time has come to deliver the appropriate blow, and takes proper aim. Igni detects his comrade's approach and tries to stop him, saying that he will not be able to defeat the enemy. Tiger turns his attention to the approaching Larry and fires several wind blades in his direction. Larry easily dodges the attack and gets into range to deliver a powerful blow. Pushing off the ground again, he realizes it's time to cheat and heads upward. The tiger raises its head menacingly to find out where its victim has gone, not realizing that its end has come. Larry comes down on the giant creature with all his might and delivers a powerful blow right to the head. Igni and Chester are genuinely surprised to see how successful Larry is in fighting such a giant. Chester reflects that this strike was much stronger than a 6th-class warrior's abilities would allow, and guesses that it was a technique of the heavenly demons. Chester is surprised that this man fights without paying attention to his physical condition, and does not understand how he is like this. Igni is also surprised by what he sees and tries to understand if his hereditary technique has always been so powerful. Watching her colleague, she discovers that the man is using stealth techniques in a very aggressive manner. Larry, meanwhile, multiplies the blade and says that it is time to finish this monster. Suddenly, the Moon Fairy appears behind him, ordering him to stop immediately. She states that this flying tiger is the clan elder's spiritual pet, so it must be handed over to her immediately. Larry asks her what he cares about the laws of the Immortal clan, since the terrible monster has taken many lives. He also states that by the law of the human empire, this monster must be sentenced to death. Chester watches as Larry deals with the monster in cold blood, and wonders why such a warrior would allow himself to do what even the Emperor dares not. Luna, shocked, watches this bloody massacre and is surprised by such audacity on the part of Larry. Larry says that the killer himself has been punished, but the one who controlled him and incited him to commit bloody acts is still alive. Larry also adds that this is a misunderstanding, and such a person must also pay for his crime with his life. The Moon Fairy understands that she is now confronted with a rather powerful enemy that needs to be dealt with rather quickly. She throws threats at him, saying that it is a pity that little humans do not dare to interfere in the affairs of immortals. Igni appears behind the Moon Fairy and asks her what the hell she is doing here in the middle of the night. She asks her if she really wants to buy the monster, or if she's been trying to feed it all this time. The Moon Fairy instantly summons her transport and says that she should not justify herself to pathetic humans. She flies away from here, saying that they broke the laws and will pay for it. Igni watches this scoundrel go and says that someday justice will be found for the immortals. Larry, meanwhile, falls to the ground happily, enjoying the fact that he will be able to die with a peaceful soul. Igni tries to support her comrade and asks him if everything is okay. However, he asks her for one favor. Igni says that she will fulfill any request, but he states that he does not want to be saved and gives up. Meanwhile, the monster that feeds on death finally lies down calmly on one of the branches. Kitty says that the energy of death is incomparable to anything, and his stomach is still bursting with pleasure. This animal fondly remembers Larry, who saved him, and calls this man special. He also says that he is very sorry that the tiger injured him so badly, but it was too late, and he died. The cat also wonders why he can only feed on death energy, because as soon as he sets his eyes on someone, he dies immediately. After some time, he hears very strange sounds and a rumble right below him. The cause of the rumble turns out to be none other than Larry, who wonders why he was reborn at the top of a tree. The kitten immediately rushes to his new owner, confessing his platonic love to him. Larry pets the kitten and wonders if the creature just won't leave him alone. After thinking for a bit, he says that in principle, he is not against this creature being his pet. Immediately after this, he looks at his rating and is surprised that he received rather low marks. After some thought, he suggests that the rank is so low because the laughter was not public. After thinking for a moment, he realizes that this immortal's arrogance is due to the fact that she knows that the state will not go against her clan. Having distributed his points and reached the maximum skill of the immortal account, he understands that he will take the rights into his own hands. He reflects that every time he performs this technique, his stamina increases, and therefore his lifespan. Larry wonders how much longer he has left to live, given that the system is shortening his life, and the immortal fist is extending it. After thinking for a bit, he asks his pet to change clothes and go punish the criminal. Having arrived in the lands of the Immortals, he looks around, discovers that this is most likely where Lily's family lived, and notices many pilgrims. A madwoman says that a few days ago her son and daughter-in-law were killed by a monster, which is why her granddaughter suffered. The grandmother says that this unfortunate girl hid in the closet, but what she experienced drove her crazy. The priest present says that a 5th-rank official is currently praying in the temple, so she should go to the end of the line. Meanwhile, the official prays so that his 9th concubine can bear him another son. The grandmother falls at the priest's feet and says that they cannot wait, since this girl is all that is left to her after her family was torn apart. The moon fairy intervenes, stops the priest, and tells him that he should not behave so rudely. She asks her grandmother if this little girl really saw her son being killed by a monster. The grandmother says that this girl lost consciousness from shock and woke up only in the morning, and since then she has not responded to anything. She wonders if the monster has eaten her soul. The moon fairy looks at this child with indifference and says that, apparently, this is exactly the case. She also addresses the couple and tells them that they should follow her and she will take care of the girl's treatment. Suddenly, Larry steps out from the crowd, stands up for the innocent, and says that the immortal cannot be listened to. Immediately after this, he throws insults at them, saying that the moon fairy is the one who allowed these murders to happen in the first place. The moon fairy, surprised, turns around and wonders why the man is still whole if he was torn apart by a tiger. The crowd is very easily swayed by such gossip and wonders if the immortal is behind all this. The moon fairy says that Larry is a constable and therefore must act formally and according to protocol, and not make unfounded accusations. The priest takes the side of the immortals and says that this man really allows himself too much, because even the emperor is not so impudent. The moon fairy states that this man accuses her of such a terrible crime, because there were disagreements between them in the past. She immediately turns to him and says that such unfounded accusations will result in serious punishment. Larry holds that stern gaze and looks at her with a willingness to give in to the fight. Suddenly, the crazy girl comes to her senses and says that the moon fairy is to blame for everything. For some reason, she starts talking about how the tiger was responsible for the death of her family and starts screaming in fear. The grandmother tries to calm her granddaughter down, telling her that she will be fine now because she is safe. The crowd watches what is happening in surprise and begins to talk about how they have heard something about her clan of immortals. The moon fairy is lost in possession and decides to calm the crowd, which begins to grumble. She asks them how mortal bugs allowed themselves to exchange the heavenly inhabitants, because it is like a death sentence. Immediately after this, she points her finger at Larry and says that he, as a representative of the state who caused all this chaos, should pay with his life. Larry says that he is a representative of the state, since all this time he was the brother of the deceased constable. By drawing his weapon, he says that since human laws are unable to administer justice, he will do it. With these words, he rushes forward to deliver a powerful blow to the immortal with his spear. The chief priest immediately comes to her side, draws his weapon and blocks the blow. He asks Larry how he dared to have the audacity to raise his hand against his older sister. Rushing forward, he declares that he will chop him into pieces for such insolence. Larry asks why a martial artist would suddenly become a minion of immortals, to which he states that the masters are just pathetic mortals. He also states that killing him will allow him access to the inner part of the clan, and then he will be able to improve the demon retribution technique. Larry doesn't want to listen to this nonsense any longer, and delivers a powerful attack to his opponent, instantly knocking down his fighting spirit. This attack is so powerful that it sends the enemy flying, breaking several walls. Fortunately, this blow is enough to disable the enemy. Larry chuckles and says that the technique of paying off the demons of heaven is nothing new to him. However, unfortunately, in the midst of empty chatter, he does not have time to react to the strange piece of paper that is sent straight in his direction. The moon fairy decides to move on to serious magic and orders the protagonist to die immediately and go to hell. At this time, Larry looks at this piece of paper, which turns out to be covered with a mysterious spell. A moment later, a small explosion occurs, creating a crater from which several tongues of flame burst forth. Larry realizes that he needs to make quick decisions if he wants to stay alive after this. To do this, he decides to dodge, hoping that the tongues of fire will not have time to touch his skin. The spear, which remained standing, immediately began to melt, unable to withstand such intense heat. Larry is surprised by this, realizing that the iron spear melted in a matter of seconds, which means the power of the immortal techniques is too great. A small piece of flame unfortunately hits his hand, causing an incredible burning sensation. Larry discovers that he has failed to perform a perfect dodge. The flames begin to spread very quickly throughout his body, causing him incredible suffering. The moon fairy looks at the protagonist and asks him what he thinks about this talisman, adding that she is rare and uses it. She also says that this flame will not stop burning until he turns to ashes. Larry says he is very impressed with the effects this ever-burning flame produces. Immediately after this, he rushes towards her, saying that he doesn't care, since he will use this to take revenge. The moon fairy calls the protagonist a madman and asks him why he can't calm down. Larry claims that the immortal who has committed so many atrocities has become worse than a real demon. With a good grip on the rage raging in his hands, He lunges at her and tells her that he will prove that there is still justice in this world. At that very moment, he embraces her in order to cover her with flames, which will also destroy her, despite the fact that she is immortal. The Moon Fairy understands that she is about to die and wonders how she could have fallen at the hands of this pathetic bug. Raising her hand towards the sky, she tries to ask her older brothers and sisters for support, but no one answers. Larry continues to stand still, despite being outmatched by the Immortal, who immediately falls and finally gives up her spirit. Larry is glad that he spent all his points on the Immortal Fist, because otherwise he wouldn't have survived the flames. He also realizes that this is far from the end of his adventure, turning around to find out what will happen to him next. Looking at the people looking at him, he understands that this Immortal will no longer be able to harm this grandmother and granddaughter, and legends will be composed about him. He muses that death by fire would be incredibly beautiful, and the death rating simply has to be very high. Unfortunately, only a few moments pass for him, and a powerful blow of a blade cuts through the air. The blade develops such speed that it penetrated the stone statue quite deeply. Larry begins to feel the unquenchable pain again, but at the same time the plans leave his body. People watching this ask what happened, assuming that the Immortal's plan has decided to take revenge. A few more moments pass, and they stare in surprise as the flames suddenly disappear. Larry realizes that the flames were stopped by that sword that is all around. He guesses that the flame initially hit his hands, and therefore was the primary source, getting rid of which he could stop burning. He also thinks that just was it so hard to do before, since now his body is ugly, and it would be better for him to die. Larry approaches the common people and asks if they could lend him a pair of pants, which makes them very enthusiastic. He also warns the crowd that they must flee from here to avoid bringing the Immortals upon themselves. As soon as all the people run away, he turns his gaze into the thicket and says that now his savior can appear. He asks himself with a smile on his face to whom he owes his life. Chester turns to the Emperor and says that he has carried out the order to save this man, but he does not seem very happy. The Emperor says that this man is very unpredictable, adding that he needs to be watched further. Chester says that the Emperor recently declared that he was unworthy of being called the Son of Heaven if a mere mortal could carry out justice, unlike him. Chester also states that he always understood his situation and believed in his far-sightedness, which does not allow him to act impulsively. The Emperor says that there is no point in this unless you can act freely, just like this man. After thinking for a moment, the Emperor orders his subordinate to take one person so that he can be safe. Chester ordered, as suddenly the wind began to thicken and strengthen significantly. Chester says that it all happened too far, since the Moon Fairy died at the hands of a mortal, even using a corrosive talisman. Somewhere in the distance, Immortals are saying that this fairy always craved attention, despite her lack of talent, which means that she herself is to blame for her death. The Immortal is tired of saying that this time they will have to deal with the temple on their own, because it is a place of pilgrimage. One of them says that if they don't deal with this damn boy, their relationship could get much worse. Turning his gaze to one of the peaks, he discovers that someone is flying very fast. A comet. They say that since the bone talisman was used, it is this girl who will intervene in the matter. Meanwhile, a beautiful girl appears in front of Larry, moving on a flying ball and carefully examining him. She asks him who he is, and Larry realizes that he is facing a very powerful warrior. Larry says that he is a seeker of truth and justice and asks the girl who she is. An elder named Citron sighs and says that this conversation is already starting to tire her. With these words, she raises her hand and says that the immortal truth is in such a case when he is wrong. Before Larry can react, his body is once again covered in the new bone-decomposing talisman technique. This time, the pain really starts to eat away at his body, causing bouts of fire. Larry screams that this flame is 10 times more powerful than the flame that the Moon Fairy spewed at him. Larry smiles and says that it will be interesting to see if he likes such a sacrifice. Citrine wonders if martial artists are so desperate that they send 6th grade boys to the Immortals. She also looks up, realizing that just a second ago she felt someone else's presence, but now there is no one here. Immediately after this, she decides to go back, since now is not the time to cause a stir. Larry, meanwhile, had already been revived, which caused incredible delight in his pet, who adores the energy of death. Larry is advised to stop sucking energy out of him at least sometimes, to help in order to be useful. The system notifies the protagonist that he has received a high mortality rating, because he has become a true enemy of the Immortals. Larry smiles and says that he has reached the 4th grade, and will soon be able to begin cultivating immortality. The system also tells him that he has learned martial arts 100% and has become a true professional. Larry wonders if this beast and folding immortal knew about these arts, and therefore, is somehow connected to him. Using mysterious spiritual connections, he decides to follow her to find out who she is. A few moments later, he finds himself in the Elder's Abode, which is located on the spiritual lake. The girl reflects on the fact that, apparently, a real traitor has appeared in the association. The scene moves to a mountain temple dedicated to Saint Citrine. People talk about burning incense in honor of their merciful lady and wishing for her blessings. The girl feels all this energy, but understands that it is clearly not enough. She understands that in order to get even higher, she needs much more grace. After some time, she feels a suspicious presence near her and realizes that someone is here. Larry, meanwhile, makes his way closer, looking around carefully, studying his surroundings. While holding a little girl hostage, he says that he didn't think the elder would live in such an unsightly place. The girl only asks the Ghost Master for mercy, saying that her father forced her to join the clan, and she had nothing to do with it. Larry tries to intimidate her by saying that if she answers his questions honestly, he will let her go. But if not, he will take her with him. The girl says that she will not lie to him, and Larry asks her where the lady came from. The girl says that Citrine used to be a student of a man called the Holy Warrior, who was distinguished by his hatred of immortals. She also says that 40 years ago, this Holy Warrior was defeated by an immortal, and since then, he joined some criminal group and went into hiding. She also says that about 10 years ago, Citrine joined their clan, but would practice the art. He also says that he admires her talent for cultivating immortality, and she really wants to become like her. Larry thinks that this is a very smart move, and reflects that now he understands why everyone here is ready to lick the heels of these immortals. He also reflects that Citrine is unlikely to have anything to do with the destruction of Lily's family, meaning she is not guilty. Larry asks her how much she knows about martial arts, trying to find out how much experience she has. The girl says that she is not yet worthy of being noticed, so she must work harder. Larry asks her how strong Citrine is, after which the girl says that her mistress is incredibly strong. Larry notices a flying piece of paper that causes the destruction of all living things and grabs the girl. Immediately after this, he throws her aside to save her from a cruel death. Citrine emerges from the flames and holds out her hand, saying that she has heard too much. Larry says that if he hadn't reacted in time, this girl would have turned to ashes, and tries to understand whether this woman really considers people to be the United States. Citrine looks closely at her opponent and asks him what the hell he is doing here. Larry realizes that he once again needs to come up with a very plausible story about how he got here. Without thinking twice, he calls himself the brother of the man she burned, and therefore it is imperative to take revenge for this. Citrine doesn't respond to this nonsense and simply sends him towards another fireball. Larry tries to resolve the issue peacefully by pointing out that they actually came from the same kindergarten called the Martial Arts World. Citrine suggests that Larry came here because the Holy Warrior sent him, adding that his plans will not succeed because she will kill him. Larry says that he has no idea what he is talking about, since he has no connection with this righteous warrior. He also states that they both have something similar called his cultivation effect technique. Citrine closes herself off for a while and immerses herself in very traumatic memories. Larry reflects on what it means that he is right, and that they do indeed share the same techniques that they practiced. He asks her if she betrayed the righteous warrior in order to take the equipment for herself. Citrine ignores this provocation, and says that her brother is in the Emperor's guard that day, after which she asks him whether he works for him or not. Larry is surprised by this statement and reflects on the fact that they have nothing in common. Citrine gets angry and says that Larry should confess where the Emperor is now. Larry asks if she will believe him if he has never seen this Emperor, to which the girl replies that in that case they have nothing to talk about. Larry realizes that he is dealing with a very crazy woman and decides to retreat so as not to create additional problems for himself. Suddenly he is stabbed in the back, and he realizes that the blow was dealt by the girl he did not kill. Larry turns around and asks what the hell she's doing, to which the girl replies that he has no other choice. Due to the blow he received, he does not have time to return in time, and his body sticks to the paper with a bone-eating effect. A moment later, his body turns out to be a real fireball somewhere. Only a few seconds pass, and our hero dies ingloriously, only to be resurrected once again. The girl falls to her knees before Citrine and begs her for mercy, saying that she will immediately write to her father and ask him to build several more temples. Citrine states that people should know their place, threatening to kill the entire family if something like this happens again. The girl lowers her eyes and says that she understands everything perfectly, and will not allow anything like that to happen. Citrine heads to her elders and reports that she has been attacked by someone connected to the Emperor. The elders speak to her through amulets, stating that they must not be distracted from their cultivation. Citrine says that this clan has been searching for the Emperor for a long time, and this information should raise her in the clan hierarchy. Looking up, she realizes that she must become stronger to achieve true immortality. At this time, a bizarre temple of clouds appears before her eyes, on which a huge number of mirrors are hovering. The action moves to the city as Larry decides to spend the night in a small tavern. The narrator tells tales about Larry, saying that he was consumed by hellfire, but managed to emerge from there alive and asked if the immortals could withstand his determination. Larry mingles with the crowd and muses that drinking tea while being told stories about his own circumference is simply wonderful. He also understands that burning to ashes, and especially doing it twice, was not very pleasant. The system rated his death quite low, which greatly irritates the protagonist. He muses that Citrine still fears her former teacher despite joining the Immortals. He assumes that she was probably sent there as a spy, but she is still trying to escape from his control. Larry wonders how this relates to the immortality cultivation technique, and realizes that he can now sense the presence of martial artists. The action moves to the Nan Ranges, where the headquarters of the Immortal clan is located. The gathering includes quite a few experienced martial artists, as well as true immortals. One of the elders reports that he received a message from Citrine that the Emperor has appeared in the prefecture. The other immortal smiles and says that finally their plan will start working. The third elder states that according to the agreement, in half a month the Emperor, disguised as a simple guard, must go to the peak and bow before the immortals. The gray elder states that in order to hide his movements from the sight of other immortal clans, he must use the treasure, the mirror. He adds that the 9 clans of immortals have reigned in the heavens for centuries, and 40 years ago, they destroyed the last elite warriors. Another elder suggests acting more peacefully, stating that a cultivator should probably not interfere with the Emperor's fate. The chief elder states that they are not trying to take the throne from the Emperor, as his title means nothing. The elder states that they must control the Monkey King by becoming him. The more angry elder declares that in any case, in half a month this man will bow before them, whether he wants it or not. The chief elder says that it is not worth getting into loud conflicts, so as not to provoke people. He also recommends sacrificing Citrine as a consumable item to invest in the common people. He claims that they only used her as bait for the holy warrior. He is disappointed and says that after so many years he has not shown up despite their efforts, which means they don't need her anymore. Chester tells his master that he has done some investigating and found out that Larry had nothing to do with her when her family was destroyed. He also reports that not long ago in a nearby town they announced heroes, a father and his sons, who bore the same surname. The Emperor states that these people possess a strange technique that probably destroys the body, and therefore leads to the extinction of the race. Suddenly, Chester realizes that something very strange is approaching them. Looking up, he sees a giant energy clot, which the Emperor reports. A moment later, this clot materializes into a person, who is one of the immortals. The elder greets the Emperor, calling him by name and coming closer. The Emperor looks closely at the immortal and asks him what brought him here. The elder states that he has come so that the Emperor can come, since in just a month he must be on the 5 mountains. He adds that news has reached him that some adjacent temple of his subordinate has found itself in this confusion. The Emperor takes in this information, trying to understand how the immortals were able to know about all this. Chester muses that he was using a blade with no identifying marks, but they were still able to identify him. After a while, he realizes that Citrine was also a master, and that's why his throwing technique was recognized. The Emperor mentally admits that he was careless, and tries to understand whether the Immortal clan wants to use this fact against him. The Emperor smiles and says that immortals should not take such incidents too seriously, as he did not mean to offend anyone. The Elder indifferently states that the blame for yesterday's incident lies entirely with Saint Citrine and her subordinate. He also states that this is why they decided to strip her of her title and banish her from here, so that she would not bother others. The Emperor is amazed at how easily the immortals can get rid of their own, as if they were spent coin. He wonders in his mind if even one immortal clan cares about justice. Rising into the air, the Elder says that since this issue has been resolved, it is time for the Emperor to move out. Rising into the air, he says that he will be happy to meet the Emperor in half a month at the peak of the mountain. After a few moments, he rushes into the sky, and all that remains of him is a sparkling star. Meanwhile, in the city, one of the peaceful citizens moves around it with incredible speed and dexterity. However, after a while he goes down, realizing that he was being watched very closely all this time. He prepares to fight a glorious battle and orders the spies to show themselves immediately, otherwise he will die. Larry comes out of the shadows and states that he has no bad intentions, without asking his interlocutor to calm down. He introduces himself by name and says that he probably has the most important information in this city in front of him, which he would like to address. An informant named Cherry says he has heard of the exploits of Larry's family, and is a big fan of them. He also claims that he has since been spreading the glory of his family throughout the world, inspiring people to resist the immortal tyrants. Larry notes that Cherry doesn't seem to be too afraid of immortals for a man of his profession, to which he replies that he is no ordinary storyteller. After a pause, Cherry adds that he is actually a follower of the Ting Chao Tower technique. Larry looks at his interlocutor in surprise, while someone is clearly waiting for a reaction to their words. A few seconds pass, and Larry asks what tower it is. Cherry explains that they are a warrior clan that outlived the immortals, and their leader is a great sage. Larry continues to listen attentively to his interlocutor, and asks if he is one of the intelligence officers. Cherry replies that their clan has not been as popular lately due to the difficulty of joining. Larry takes out a piece of paper and says he would like to know more about these ratings. Cherry says he's in the business of distributing stories of great heroes, but he doesn't know the details about the ratings. He also adds that for successfully completed tasks, the warrior is promised techniques from the most righteous warrior. Cherry states that these people's first target is a traitor who has joined the immortal clan named Citrine. Larry immediately turns around and walks away, saying that someday he will be very grateful for such valuable information. Larry muses that he now understands where so many martial artists come from, and that he needs to win this hunt. He smiles and says that the task is only to kill Citrine. After a while, Larry finds himself in a small diner to catch his breath. There are quite a lot of people in the cafe, among whom there are some good warriors. Larry looks around, noticing that he is surprised at how few people have come here. After some time, a warrior approaches him and asks if he is a follower of the Tower Society. Larry wonders how to address him and tries to understand what is wanted from him. One of the warriors sits down next to him and says that, judging by everything, Larry is a 4th-rank warrior at such a young age, praising his talents. The warrior also says that he has half of the scroll and the other half is in the Tower Society, which gives Larry unpleasant thoughts. The warrior states that half a scroll is already a lot, since previously advanced techniques were in the hands of large sections. Larry says he's been sitting here for half an hour wondering where the messenger who's supposed to come is. After some time, another warrior approaches him and calls him impudent, adding that no one dares to rush the messenger. This warrior states that the messenger must have thought of everything to deal with Citrine. Another warrior says that Citrine is not only a saint, but also a student of a righteous warrior, which means she has interesting skills. Suddenly, another person appears next to them and says that if they are afraid to take on this job, they can leave. He also adds that a holy warrior will only pass on his techniques to the one who can perform the task best. The man says that the fewer competitors survive this task, the better. Larry understands what the man is getting at and carefully finishes his tea, placing the cup on the table. In a moment, the warriors begin to attack each other to determine in the blink of an eye who is stronger. Larry takes a powerful blow to the chest, but it is not enough to break him into an easy victory. His opponent is surprised that his opponent can use the Iron Shirt technique. The angry warriors claim that in that case he will demonstrate his Iron Fist technique. Rushing forward, they declare that they will be happy to test whose style will prove the most durable. Larry continues to try to dodge the attacks, realizing that the fist technique is really powerful. Turning around quickly, he notices that the warrior has not moved from his spot, and realizes that this man is especially strong and has a powerful aura. Without thinking twice, he decides to act recklessly and grabs a spear that is nearby. Removing the sheath from his spear, he dodges another attack from the fist fighter and rushes forward. Unable to cope with inertia, Larry successfully knocks down the fighter, who hits the wall and loses his fighting ability for some time. Larry himself rushes forward to pierce his opponent with a spear and test his strength. The disguised warrior takes his time to repel the attack, instead pulling something out of his belt. A moment passes and both heroes find themselves a meter away from each other, having completed their blows. Larry smiles and says that his opponent could have killed him with one blow, but he deliberately held back. He adds that he deliberately provokes them into fighting in order to assess their level. After a short pause, Larry says that standing in front of him is the same messenger who has been watching them the whole time. The warriors who were fighting each other suddenly fall silent and realize that they have been misled. The messenger asks Larry how he knew, and he replies that there is only one person here who uses the spiritual connection method. Larry also states that the messenger is dressed in specific clothing and has a messenger's sign on him. The messenger looks closely at the tear in his clothes and realizes that Larry was not trying to hit him, but was trying to tear his cloak. After this, the messenger puts away his weapon, praises Larry for his ingenuity, and asks his name. Larry uses his first name but calls himself by the same last name, which raises eyebrows among the other fighters. The messenger says that this task will not be easy, and there is no place for those who do not have sufficient strength. Other warriors say that they will certainly give all their strength to destroy the cursed saint. Larry asks them where she is now, realizing that she cannot sense her presence, to which the messenger replies that her location has already been discovered. He also says that the righteous warrior is an incredible mentor who has mastered an amazing number of techniques. Continuing on their way, they come across an unfortunate man who turns out to be a volume on an infinite plane. After examining it for a bit, they don't realize that such atrocity is the work of Citrine. The fist fighter claims that the man was burned, adding that it was a witch and truly cruel. Larry claims that Citrine deliberately dragged out the burning process so that they would all see him die in agony. The fist fighter asks him how he knows so much about it, but Larry states that they have a lot of experience with it in their family. The messenger interrupts them, saying that they have found a new trail deep in these mountains, and rushes forward. The inspired warriors also follow him in order to finally reach Citrine and destroy her. After some time, they find themselves in the village of Holy Water and make their way there under the cover of night. Citrine continues her prayers in order to somehow increase her power. The elder informs her that, despite the fact that she was expelled from the section, the act and decided to find the saint's goal. Every trial is just a test. Citrine throws the amulet aside, realizing that all this time she was used as a simple tool. Citrine reflects that these elders know full well that as soon as she leaves this temple, she will become a victim of the hunt. Her thoughts are interrupted by a small child who enters her room and looks at her intently. He asks her if she is that saint, remembering that she saved them all. Citrine looks at this child carefully and wonders if the head of the county sent all the refugees here to pray and strengthen her power. Suddenly, an elderly woman approaches the child and says that the Holy Lady did not come here for this and asks for forgiveness. After throwing him out of here, she tells him that he should quickly run to his mother and not walk around late at night. Citrine asks her assistant if she brought him here to the village, to which the woman replies that they are all refugees from disasters. The woman also says that many years have passed and asks the saint if everything is okay with her. Citrine thanks the woman for her concern, calling her her mother, The woman says that the saint must be joking, since a simple woman cannot have the honor of being the immortal mother of heaven. She also mentions that she actually had a son and daughter many years ago, and Citrine asks her if they died. The poor woman is surprised to hear this, as Citrine coincidentally perfectly guesses the fate of her children. Citrine says that the holy warrior exterminated the sects to take over the battle days, and he came to the city, and in order to protect her relatives, the mother gave her daughter to safety. Citrine says that it didn't work, because the holy warrior only pretended to have made her alive, but in reality, he used her as a resource for his cultivation. Citrine adds that this man transgressed all laws for the sake of power. The holy warrior blamed human life on earthly law. Citrine says that everyone turned their backs on her, but she never blamed her mother because she founded the village 10 years ago to help her. Citrine looks on, saying that she is just a wild herb, devoid of familial luck. The elderly woman tries to understand how everything came to such a monstrous end, but she cannot utter a word. Immediately after this, Citrine leaves, wishing that her mother would take care of herself in the next life. Watching Citrine walk away, the mother turns to her daughter to get her attention. Her eyes become a little crazy, and she says that she would like to ask the saint for a blessing. After some time, Larry and his comrades find themselves near the entrance to this temple, looking around. The fist fighter says that this cursed village exudes incredible malice, but the messenger advises him not to rush. Larry stops everyone else, saying that it looks like someone is approaching them. A little boy runs ahead of everyone and asks them if they have come here to look for the saint. The fist fighter says that this is exactly what they came here for and asks him to show them the way, and suddenly the boy takes out a special talisman and sets himself on fire, saying that there are bad people in front of him. The fist fighter tries to figure out what the hell is going on and is caught off guard. Larry immediately grabs his new doomed comrade and pulls him aside so that he doesn't become a victim of a brutal death. Larry also finds the flames reaching out to him and tries to get his hand away in time. The fist fighter asks him not to move and immediately takes out his blade to deal with it. Taking careful aim at the flames flying towards him, he delivers a quick strike to develop it. Larry says that thanks to his blow, even the remnants of this magic disappeared, to which the fist fighter replies that it was just a trifling move. Immediately after this, he says that now is not the time for jokes, since the witch probably sensed their approach in advance and set up an ambush. Looking at the distraught townspeople, he understands that the villagers have been completely brainwashed, and their minds can no longer be restored. Among this crowd also walks Mother Citrine, who once gave away her daughter, but has now plunged into the depths of madness. Now there is nothing in her head except the idea that it is necessary to protect the saint. Residents set themselves on fire and say that it is necessary to die for the saint without regrets, since it is a great honor. Larry and his squad realize that the witch has gone to extreme measures to protect herself. They understand that they will nevertheless have to fight somehow to ensure their safety. The fist fighter suddenly demonstrates miracles of mastery of cold weapons and cuts down his opponents one after another. Larry watches him, wondering how he managed to cut through the blazing fire. Another warrior says that this man is a descendant of the great swordmaster. He adds that during and after the War of the Immortals, the righteous warrior was ranked 11th on the legendary hero ranking compiled by another warrior. The 10th place at that time was occupied by the descendants of this warrior, who possessed amazing swordsmanship techniques. Mother Citrine walks forward, continuing to repeat the mantra that it is a joy to guard this holy part and to die for it. Her body begins to glow brighter and brighter. She sees a man approaching her with a sword. Shortly before her death, she sees in front of her the very daughter whom the holy warrior abducted. Tears begin to appear on the unfortunate woman's face, and she approaches her doom, surrounded by flying flames. At the last moment, her sanity returns and she closes her eyes, accepting her doom. All this time, the deaths of ordinary citizens were flowing streams of energy that fed Citrine. The girl levitated in the air to at least somehow gain energy and increase her power rank. However, after some time, she feels that her mother's lifeline has suddenly ended. Her body begins to tremble and she wonders if her mother is really dead. Her lips begin to tremble and she says she just can't believe it happened. Suddenly, Citrine turns into a completely different person and says that she wanted her mother to die much earlier. She also states that thanks to her mother's strong will, she will definitely be able to complete the formation of the foundation. The peace is quickly invaded by fighters who say that they have finally found their target. The fist fighter rushes at Citrine, finishing her off with one blow. The saint looks at her opponent and orders him to die, then waves her fingers. Just a moment later, an energy sword is pierced into the fist fighter's throat, outliving his life in the blink of an eye. The messenger says that they are facing a fairly strong enemy, so they need to attack simultaneously. The saint continues to try to defend herself using the ancient techniques she has studied. At this moment, she creates several copies of herself at once to rush at the enemies. Larry tries to figure out what to do with these clones and how to tell the real one from the fake. At one point, he manages to land a blow directly to the clone's head, but this has no visible effect. On the contrary, it turns out to be a real trap, created to destroy slow-witted opponents. Larry realizes that the situation is taking a sad turn, because these people are not created to simply distract attention. His body is covered in fire again, and the same thing happens to the bodies of his comrades. Citrine, who has completely lost her mind, says that whoever is touched by this flame will burn forever, as if in hell. Immediately after this, she soars into the air so that no one can touch her and transfer this fire. The girl happily says that the world is full of suffering, and the empire is rotten, while taxes are strangling the people. She claims that only in her village can the disadvantaged be at peace and experience true happiness. The inhabitants here raise their talismans and say that Lima must light them. They repeat this cruel mantra and their bodies become covered in fire and the walls burn, which looks quite creepy from the outside. Citrine, happily looking at what is happening, says that a little more, and she will be able to break through to the completion of the formation of the base. Suddenly she hears someone's voice and turns around to see what's going on. Looking down, she finds Larry rushing forward to finish her off once and for all. Meanwhile, the swordsman, who possesses incredible technique, continues to cut down people left and right. He wonders how many more people he will have to kill to deal with this threat. A few moments later, a powerful explosion is created next to him, and he turns his head towards the destruction to understand what is happening. All this time, Larry fights on equal terms with an immortal who has almost reached the stage of forming immortality. The swordsman says that Larry continues to fight the enemy even when engulfed in flames, which makes him a true warrior. Citrine asks her opponent why he is bothering her again, since he should have burned to the ground. Larry replies that he could easily die, but that is not a big problem for him. Rushing forward with determination, he declares that she has no right to live. Throwing aside his spear, he uses multiple fist strikes to defeat his opponent. Citrine says that all of this is just a foolish attempt to resist the inevitable, since his body is not capable of resisting her spells. Larry rushes forward and says that his opponent will not live to see this moment. At the same time, other fighters who were able to defeat the eternal flame and not burn to ashes for some reason attack her. The heroes bring their swords down on her and say that the witch must accept her death outside the city. A few moments later, a powerful explosion occurs, causing a bright flash and blinding everyone around. As soon as the explosion dissipates, the warriors look around, trying to figure out what to do now. One of the most skilled swordsmen feels his body being eaten away by fire, but he quickly puts it out. Larry himself ends up being closest to Citrine, and he gets the right to deliver the final blow. Citrine looks at her opponent with indifference and says that, apparently, she is not destined to step on the path to immortality. The thing is that the main character was still able to deliver fatal blows and pierce her body through and through. She also says that if they think that killing her will save them, they are wrong. Larry says they're not killing her to save her, but because of what she did. Citrine chuckles and says that if they have mastered the Holy Warrior's spiritual kinship technique, then they have long been doomed. Citrine states that the reason this technique is so easy to learn is because the Holy Warrior himself created it to track down and kill strong fighters. Larry looks at his rival in surprise and tries to understand what she means. Citrine says that after the War of the Immortals that lasted for 40 years, the Holy Warrior went around all 9 provinces, collecting martial arts geniuses. Citrine also says that he passed on to them the best martial techniques and the most sublime cultivation methods. The girl also says that all who practice this technique are doomed, because in the end, they become not students, but food. Citrine asks his opponent if he can guess how many of those 3,000 students are still alive. She adds that even if they hide at the edge of the world, the Holy Warriors go and kill everyone to the last one. Citrine madly says that in this world they no longer have a chance to survive or hide. Larry decides to slightly twist the sword in his opponent's body to help her a little more. After this, he says that he is listening to her carefully and asks her to continue speaking. Citrine says that her opponent does not understand anything, since they are all just steps on his way to the top. Citrine states that today they killed her, and tomorrow they will kill them in the same way, since they are just pawns in his game. In an attempt to solve this problem, she asks to let her go, as she has a chance to dispel this curse. Larry arrogantly performs the finishing blow so as not to leave her alive and not to pay his competitors. Citrine looks at him in surprise and tries to understand what the motivation for these reckless actions is. Larry understands that he cannot die anyway, which means he is not afraid of these problems. Smiling, he says that anyone who kills him will only make him stronger, no matter what. Citrine falls to the ground and finally stops moving and showing even the slightest signs of life. The civilians looking at her wonder if their patroness has also left this world, not believing that this is possible. Madness also overtakes them, and they say that this girl did not die, but ascended into immortality, which means that her goal was achieved. Larry says that the flame of human hearts is far more terrible than any other. Immediately after this, he decides to visit his comrades and asks them if everything is okay with them. In order to recover, they decide to spend the night near this village and set up camp. All this time, they continue to be enveloped in an unquenchable flame, which gradually destroys their skin. Larry hopes that his comrades will hold out, despite the fact that he himself is almost completely dead. The swordsman tells him that he killed the saint, which means that the victory over her is his merit. He also says that very few people are able to earn his respect, but he was able to achieve it, because accepting death with a smile is a truly great thing. Larry reminds his friend that he will teach him his blade technique, to which he replies that as soon as they return to the city, they will start right away. A moment later, a blade hits him and pierces him right through. Larry looks at his friend in surprise and tries to understand what the hell happened, but he falls down dead. The next second, several more talismans, which are characteristic only of Citrine, are sent to the side. The messenger tries to get back from them, wondering what the hell is going on, assuming that their target is not dead. Citrine pulls it out of the dead and says that the pathetic warriors dared to dream of her death. As she rises into the air, she says that she merely used the most basic of immortal techniques to hide the signs of her life. Taking to the air, she says that warriors are there to bow before the immortals, and even holy warriors are no exception. However, after a few moments, she feels a very strange pressure in her psyche, and her heart begins to beat faster. A voice starts buzzing in her head, telling her that he sent everyone back more than 20 years ago, giving her enough time to stage it all brilliantly. Citrine nervously says that it looks like the holy warrior is somewhere nearby. Larry turns around to find his comrade, who was just killed, rising to his feet and saying that he had hoped Citrine would show something worthwhile. His body immediately begins to change, and he says he didn't expect to see such severe results. Citrine doesn't believe what's happening and says that it simply can't be, while the holy warrior continues his metamorphosis. He stomps menacingly across the ground, causing a slight tremor with his powerful presence. He wonders if she couldn't recognize him even after he changed his body. Larry understands that something incredibly terrible is about to happen here, and tries not to interfere ahead of time. He also discovers that the flames they were unable to put out were destroyed in an instant. Another warrior says that this man's aura is hundreds of times stronger than Citrine's. Looking at this man, they realize that in front of them is the very man who created the technique that Citrine spoke of. Citrine looks at her adoptive father and asks him why he followed her around all this time. The holy warrior asks her if she can't understand why she couldn't sense him approaching. This man's arrogance is entirely consistent with his barbaric nature, despite the fact that some people consider him noble. Looking at his adopted daughter, who has been placed in a strange family, he says that she is not worthy of asking questions because she is too weak. Citrine falls to her knees in horror and begs her adoptive father's forgiveness, saying that she was too overwhelmed by his power. The holy warrior said that he named her Citrine because he wanted her spirit to be a light. However, she did not succeed in anything. The holy warrior claimed that if she wanted to live so much, then there was a chance, which is why the girl began to thank him. However, it all turned out to be a trap as the holy warrior declared that she must defeat him. Looking sternly at the girl, who was several times weaker than him, he said that she had to prove that she was worthy of living. Citrine thought about how she was trying her best to hide from him, and lived in fear in order to survive. And now, this day has finally come. The holy warrior said that he kills obedient and useless children, so she doesn't have much of a choice. Citrine thought that this man was not joking. If she could not win this fight, she would definitely die. After thinking for a long time, she took a fighting stance, realizing that she had no chance of winning. In any case, she would lose. Larry wondered if this girl was really going to fight to the death and hope to win. He could see that this was something interesting. The holy warrior looked at his daughter carefully, preparing to fight her with all his might. After a short pause, the girl rushed forward to make a powerful attack. Larry was surprised by this tactic, and tried to understand whether the girl really wanted to share martial arts with him. The holy warrior looked at his daughter carefully, waiting for the blow she was about to deliver. However, Citrine could not stand the nervous tension, and tried to escape so as not to become a victim of her father. She realized that she had no chance of fighting her father. She would lose anyway. She hoped that she would be able to win, because she was immortal and would fight to the end to survive. Unfortunately, she was unsuccessful, as the holy warrior felt an urgent need to finish her off. Larry was amazed by the holy warrior's incredible speed, and realized that such abilities were very rare. The holy warrior said that he had placed his hopes on her, but now he realized that it was a mistake. He also stated that mistakes could be corrected, and began to absorb the life force of the unfortunate girl. Citrine tried to beg him, saying that she really wanted to live and did not deserve such a fate. She asked him why she deserved such a fate, because all her life she just wanted to live. She also stated that all the immortals abandoned her, using her as fuel, and do not know what it means to live in fear all your life. Finally, she said that the day would come when he too would experience this and die a terrible death. The arrogant holy warrior threw away the daughter he had snatched from her unhappy family to use, realizing that he no longer needed her. The other warriors watched as the saint was brought down by the warrior's incomprehensible ambitions and cruelty, and her body remained only a skeleton, and now her soul can rest in heaven. One of the warriors said that apparently the same fate awaited her as that girl who was driven into a corner. The messenger asked his companion if he was scared when he saw something like that. He said that all the martial artists in the world dream of defeating the immortals, and the whole world knows that only a holy warrior can do this. Larry sarcastically noted that the holy warrior himself had destroyed all the martial arts clans of that time after his defeat. After this, he stated that the strong raise their blade against those who are stronger, while the weak fight against those who are even weaker. But he who kills his own is not able to bring peace. The holy warrior, not one to tolerate criticism, asked Larry if he was trying to teach him how to act. Larry replied that a true righteous man does not save his life for the sake of righteousness. He is ready to die in order to remain true to himself. Larry asked the warrior why he was still alive if he believed that he could sacrifice his own for some illusory goals. With such an assurance, he challenged the arrogant man who was ready to destroy even his own children because they were not strong enough. The holy warrior smiled and said that now he was really getting interested. Immediately after this, he ordered the protagonist to rise up so that he could receive death, to which Larry replied that the holy warrior must descend. The holy warrior sat on the roof and said that Larry would have the right to choose the weapon with which to fight. He also stated that he was waiting for him and would not tolerate further cowardice. Larry turned to his spear and moved closer to take it. With a deft movement of his foot, he threw it into the air and made it spin. However, after a few moments, he quickly intercepted it with his hand and performed several heroes. Immediately after this, he demonstrated his readiness to fight by looking at his opponent and showing him the weapon. Focusing, he rushed forward to fight one of the most powerful beings on Earth. The holy warrior did not change his arrogance and continued to sit on the roof, completely ignoring his opponent. Larry rushed forward, pointing the weapon at his opponent and preparing to test his strength. The holy warrior, responding to such deadly blows, extended his finger forward to stop the attack in the blink of an eye. Larry looked in surprise at the holy warrior, who still hadn't moved. He thought that this man didn't even use energy, but repelled the attack with his body. These circumstances gave him a rush of adrenaline, and he realized that in such a case he had to fight to the death. He continued to deliver multiple blows to his opponent, but he blocked them with his finger. The holy warrior stated that such a technique was created specifically against fighters with powerful muscles, and that was a good answer. Larry didn't respond, and quickly went behind his opponent to perform a surprising attack. The holy warrior didn't even turn towards his opponent, showing complete indifference to his attempts. Larry took good aim and delivered a powerful blow right between the shoulder blades of his main opponent. The holy warrior noted with surprise that at such a young age, Larry had already learned many connecting techniques. He added that the heavenly demon's technique was not bad, but he emphasized that it could not negate the essence of martial arts. Then, straining his back muscles, he destroyed the weapon his opponent wielded and declared that the technique was now of no use. At that moment, Larry flew to the side and tried to stop his fall, as well as the girl's fall, with the help of his hands. He also noted that the martial arts technique looked very impressive. According to him, it was an ideal target for farming points. He called the opponent old and said that he probably had more techniques than he could imagine. The holy warrior reminded him with a grin that Lily's entire family had failed his Fist of Eternal Life technique, meaning that Larry didn't stand a chance. At that moment, he launched a powerful attack, knocking Larry into the roof. The blow was so strong that the main character broke through several floors and rushed down. The warriors who observed what was happening came to the conclusion that it was unlikely that anyone would have had enough vitality to survive after such a thing. The hole in the roof that formed after the impact was indeed huge. The explosion caused by his fall raised thick clouds of smoke, in which he was almost invisible. Meanwhile, the holy warrior asked Larry if he really wanted to know why others always die, and only he remains. Enjoying his omnipotence, he declared that all other people were just weaklings. He also added that although people knew his name, no one realized that he was not born with it. The holy warrior decided to share his story, reporting that in the first half of his life, he rapidly rose both in combat and in his career. He mentioned that he once lost a battle with the Immortals, and it really took a toll on him. After that, he abandoned everything, both his post and his title, went into seclusion, dedicated himself to the path of combat, and taught the full version of his technique to 10 of the strongest fighters in the world. He added that they agreed to meet in 10 years and fight, with the winner receiving everyone else's martial arts. He noted with regret that in those days, any of the 10 could have become a warrior, but in the end, only he remained alive. The holy warrior declared that the strong always defeats the weak, and this is the highest law of the world, as well as the essence of his path. Immediately after that, he looked down at his opponent and said that he was clearly not strong. Larry lay motionless, unable to withstand such powerful technology. At the same time, the holy warrior received back damage from the heavenly demon's disintegration. He concluded that his opponent was too weak, and even absorbing his strength was pointless. Meanwhile, Larry began to show signs of life and was preparing for a powerful counterattack. A few moments later, his blow landed on the back of the holy warrior, who had lost his vigilance. However, his reaction was still fast enough to intercept this attack. It soon became clear that it was merely a severed hand that had been used as bait. A moment later, the holy warrior received a powerful slap right across the face. He then decided to use the wave fist, using only 60% of his power. He watched his opponent with interest, trying to understand what he was trying to achieve. Larry continued to throw a variety of punches, trying to gain the upper hand in the fight. The holy warrior noted with amazement that even though he was in a losing position, this boy continued to fight no matter what. In this way, he even managed to gain an advantage for a short time. The rest of the warriors watched what was happening in amazement, not believing their eyes and trying to understand how he managed to achieve this. They remembered that the technique that Larry possessed allowed him to deliver several blows at once in an extremely short period of time. The warriors continued to support their comrade, hoping that he would be able to defeat his main opponent. The holy warrior endured a huge number of blows and only chuckled, realizing that it would not cause him any serious harm. Then his eyes began to shine, and he admitted that his opponent was much more interesting than he thought. Immediately after this, he went through a series of attacks, grabbing Larry by the face so that he could not resist. One of the warriors realized that the holy warrior was about to use the very technique he had borrowed by absorbing his daughter. Larry just looked at him with disdain and asked who exactly he was going to eat, since there were many powerful warriors in his family. He said that his entire family lived for honor and would not stop, no matter how many of them died. He also asked if the holy warrior would be able to defeat the Immortal if he destroyed his entire lineage. The holy warrior looked at Larry carefully, did not say a word, and did not finish him off. One of the warriors, observing what was happening, realized that Larry's actions were a challenge to the holy warrior. The holy warrior stated that if Larry was so eager to die, then he would have no problem helping him do so. At that very moment, he made a quick movement with his hands and broke Larry's neck. After this, Larry fell to the ground. His breathing soon stopped, and he stopped showing signs of life. The holy warrior turned to the other fighters who were looking at him and said that they should hate him. He also advised them to become stronger so that they could stand before him again one day, as killing him was their only hope. The warriors realized that this man was giving them time to prepare, to mature, so that he could absorb their new powers. One of the fighters said that he would not allow him to fall to such baseness, and would tell the whole world about what happened here. The holy warrior said he would not object to this. He added that he would wait for anyone who decided to challenge him, because he respected fair fights. After some time, the wounded Larry asked the holy warrior why he had not killed him, assuming that he was going to be used as bait. The holy warrior began to answer, but Larry interrupted, increasingly emotionally asking why he had not kept his promise. In response, the holy warrior noted that the desire for death was Larry's personal business, but it was he who would decide whether to allow it. After these words, he turned to Larry and took a sip from his cup with a slight smile. Larry said that the holy warrior simply wants him to vegetate in this world as a cripple. And this, in his opinion, is a much worse fate than death. The holy warrior then asked Larry if he wanted to learn the technique of tempering the spirit, adding that he could share something similar. Larry noted with irritation that not long ago they had almost killed each other, and now they were asking him to work for him. The holy warrior replied that it would be a mistake to refuse prematurely, and pointed to a nearby mountain range. He said that at the top there was a Taoist temple, which served as the residence of the sect of Immortals that they were about to visit. He then added that ordinary people would probably not be able to get there, but the emperor was planning to go there on a pilgrimage soon. The warrior himself claimed that there was nothing special about Immortals, because they were the same cultivators as everyone else. He also noted that the worship of the emperor would serve as an example to the people, and the whole country could soon be plunged into religious madness and blind worship. After that, he suggested to Larry, since he was so eager for death, to try to do something great: kill the current emperor. Larry realized that he had been hatching a similar plan for a long time, and he saw in these words another chance to realize it. The holy warrior added that if Larry succeeded, he would personally pass on the highest technique to him, and then, having achieved perfection, they would be able to fight again. Larry chuckled, noting that killing the emperor and then borrowing the holy warrior's technique to use against him was quite a funny plan. Having become close to the holy warrior, Larry asked him how he started pretending to be a swordsman, and he responded by saying that he simply defeated a competitor and took his place. After some time, sharp clicks were heard in the air, a sign of rapid movement, and an unknown person appeared in front of the heroes. It turned out to be one of the 7 great masters of the martial arts path named Zhen.